everyone, Brian Lopes in the studio, legend of mountain biking and SoCal resident, mate to the studio, so welcome, mate.
Yeah, I just kind of grew up racing BMX. Me and Jeremy used to race each other. I was at a race with my parents, and I was like kind of getting a little burnt out, and I was like, Dad, maybe I should race pro at this race, like kind of over racing for trophies. And he's like, let's do it. I signed up, made like $800 or something that weekend, and I was like, that was kind of like the new fire under my ass. I was like, I'm into this. First national was in Big Bear. Ended up getting 5th in the downhill. I was pumped because I beat out Johnny T. On my first race, squeaked out Johnny T by a few tenths of a second or something. You know, I mean, when I first started racing mountain bikes, we didn't even have disc brakes. Suspension was kind of like just starting to happen. Bikes just kept getting more travel. Tires kept getting better. Every year it was just like progress.
This episode is brought to you by Yamaha and the all-new 2024 YZ250F. It's no secret that I've been a big fan of this 250F.
Where would you go right now if you want to win a lights championship?
Star Yamaha.
And in 2024, Yamaha has migrated their latest chassis platform to the quarter-litre King. With the new chassis designed to give you flex in the right areas that allow for maximum feel through the turns without sacrificing stability. There's also an all-new Ergos package designed at slimming down the bike and updates to the rider triangle to improve rider comfort. The Yamaha still has that same exciting engine package that has become a modern icon in the 250 class, rocketing Star Racing to the lion's share of the last decade's titles. Combine this with Yamaha's Bluetooth connectivity for easy mapping and engine monitoring, and you have one of the best production 250s on the market today. To learn more, head to YamahaMotorsports.com or click the link in the description below.
I met a Gypsy.
You know, there was everyone, Brian Lopes in the studio, legend of mountain biking and SoCal resident, mate to the studio, so welcome, mate.
Thank you.
Yeah, no, I was actually literally saying to Tani Seagrave yesterday that I was so in the mountain biking kind of world when, like, in your prime especially, you know, like that's my era. Yeah. And now I just couldn't, there'd be 50 bike companies I just couldn't even recognize.
Right.
Which is crazy to think.
Yeah, I mean, it's always changing, right? Like, all the time. Well, we'll see how many bike companies survive after this year.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's been pretty wild watching just literally the last couple months. Like, even like Cam Zink did the podcast, and then by the time from recording to releasing it, he literally lost his bike company sponsor, and he just won Rampage. Like, he's one of the biggest names in the sport, and it's just gone like crazy.
Same with Kyle.
Kyle Straight, and that same thing happened.
Yeah. I mean, there's a lot of good riders out there that have lost bike sponsors. Jill and Bryn Atkinson, I know, lost theirs, but yeah, I mean, it's definitely a rough time, and we'll see who survives it. But yeah, I feel bad for those guys, especially, you know, their biggest event of the year. Yeah, and those companies couldn't have told them like before, maybe.
Well, yeah, I mean, it's kind of sketchy. I mean, what do you do there though? Like, because you could play that both ways, right? So like, as a sponsor, you go, let's not, like, you know, mess with his head before the biggest event of the year, like, you know. Yeah. But then on the flip side, when the guy wins and then you dump him like a couple weeks later, that's also a pretty bad look as well. So I don't know, like, there's two moral ways to look at it.
Totally. But I mean, I don't know the details about those guys' brands and, you know, where they're at now, but I mean, what did it really do for that brand, right?
Exactly.
If they're folding anyways.
Yeah, no, it's so true. And I mean, it could be, well, have you ever seen anything like this in the bike industry? Like, you've been around a long time.
I have been around a long time. Yeah, back in 2001, I believe it was, or 2002, I got on GT after I raced for Volvo Cannondale. Then I went to GT, but it was kind of like the beginning for me where I wasn't actually on the GT team, but I was sponsored by GT for frames. It was kind of like the beginning where I started getting all my own, kind of putting my own team, I guess, together, but it was just me.
Yeah.
But putting all my own sponsors together. But I rode a GT bike. I actually used the GT mechanics and kind of traveled with the factory GT team.
What sponsors did you have on the bike at the time?
I had
and you had some big outside industry sponsors with that when you were doing your own team, or
no,
it was all in
yeah.
mostly inside.
Yeah, I had Fox clothing.
Yeah.
Bell helmets, Oakley, Fox shocks, Maxxis tires. I don't know. There was a bunch back then.
I remember it just looking so good. Like when you made that switch to GT and Fox, Oakley, Bell, that, it all looked so clean.
Yeah. That was a good time. I mean, Fox was an awesome company to have as a gear sponsor back then, for sure. Probably one of the best back in the day. But yeah, during that time, I can't remember if it was the first or second or third year. I rode GTs for about 7 years, but at one point, Steve Pete was on the team, and he was kind of like my roommate when we would travel and stuff. And GT went bankrupt. They filed Chapter 11, and everybody on the team didn't get paid the last few months of their salary, and me included. But thankfully for me, that was just like a portion. I don't remember exactly, 40-50% of my overall kind of money that I was bringing in from all my sponsors. Whereas like for Petey,
it was everything.
It was probably 90%. He may have had a few of his own small individual sponsors, but that was his main thing. And so, that was definitely a time I remember where.
But was it industry wide, or was it just GT at the time?
It was just GT that folded, and I don't remember exactly why, but yeah.
Yeah, so I guess it has happened in the industry before, but this time around it's like crazy. It seems like it's almost industry wide in a sense, it seems like you've got the kind of legacy brands that fairly like independent, but from what I've gathered from like just kind of reading stuff online and trying to listen to certain people talk about it, it seems like it's all these investment groups that came in off the back of like COVID, and the companies making a bunch of cash in COVID, and then they just start making these like year-on-year projections based off the investment companies, and no one in the bike companies was like, probably won't keep growing 40% year-on-year, and then it's like, so I take it that's what's happened, and basically like they've pulled their money out and been like, okay, we're not doing it, and then that leaves the companies folded.
Yeah. I mean, I'm sure it's slightly different for each one of them, right? But I mean, I know across the board, most of the brands are not doing great, right? I think the strong are going to survive, but there's definitely a few of those big brands out there that are kind of making this tidal wave happen too, with big sales and stuff like that, right? Like, when certain huge brands are just like discounting everything at 30-40% off, right? Like the little brands, they kind of got to do it too, but then can they really survive, if they're discounting everything at those huge margins? Because, who's going to go buy a little small boutique brand
for $7 when you can get something else awesome for $3.5 or whatever. Yeah. No, and did you see a massive uptake of mountain biking on the trails in California through that COVID time? Like you could really tell.
It started off, it was awesome. At the beginning, it was awesome. Because, where I live in Laguna, there's really like only a handful of parking lots. Like if people are driving in from town, right, to park. I mean, you can park, in town and ride your bike into an entrance or, in a neighborhood or something. But there's really only like a handful of legit legal parking areas.
Yeah.
Well, I live about, I don't know, a quarter mile from the dirt, and we have our own little entrances through some neighborhoods. So it was kind of weird because I think the trails were not closed, but the parking areas were closed.
Ah.
So there just wasn't a lot of people out there. It was awesome. Like I'd go ride all the time, you know, and like everybody's like hunkered in their house or, you know, not going outside. And I'm like, this is awesome. I got the whole park to myself, you know, or obviously a handful of us out there, but yeah, it's good.
And then it changed at some point.
Well, yeah, then it, you know, eventually obviously started opening up and more people for sure. I mean, it was awesome in a lot of ways, just having that many people out there, you know, experiencing the outdoors and bikes or hiking or whatever it was. Yeah, and I mean, that was obviously part of the big boom, right? As more and more people were like, hey, we can go. We can't go to the movies maybe, but we can go ride our bikes.
Yeah, yeah. And it's just interesting that you can see it. Like you can actually see the groundswell of people like, happening in real time. Like you've been on those trails for 20 years, I'm guessing, maybe more.
Yeah.
So it's like you've seen everything that those trails have seen.
Yeah.
So for you to actually be able to see the impact and the kind of like groundswell of people that, you know, went to mountain biking, it's wild to think that you could actually see a change.
Yeah. Yeah, for sure. I mean, there's tons of people out there, but, you know, eventually that slowed down and, you know, people are back to work.
Back on their Xbox.
Yeah. Back on their Xbox or whatever they're on. But, yeah, I mean, during those times too, like, because, you know, the whole industry was crazy, right? COVID happened. All these companies, like, put the brakes on ordering stuff and making new things because they didn't know what was going to happen. And then, obviously, whatever, 3, 4, 5 months later, everybody's like, holy shit, like, we got to go full gas. And, and now everybody's ordering everything. So they're already kind of behind. And then, you know, then obviously people couldn't get stuff. All the price, if you did have stuff to sell, you know, bikes were through the roof and the used market was through the roof.
Yeah.
I mean, I sold some bikes that I had just laying around. I was like, I'm going to get rid of this shit. You know, I'm not attached to anything, you know. So, but now it's completely opposite, right? Just like the market is the used and the new market is crap.
Yeah. Nah, crazy time. And it's a very interesting time to have like Yamaha, Gas, Husky, like Ducati. It's very strange now that you've got big motorcycle manufacturers that are seeing the value in that market. And it'll be interesting how it plays out, but it might add a bit of stability.
Yeah.
You know, because the Yamaha makes pianos and boats and like guitars. They do literally everything.
Yeah.
So it's like that's a very stable company. So it's like I wonder if these new motorcycle OEMs coming into the industry might kind of like stabilize everything a little bit.
Yeah, I mean, it'll be interesting to see. I mean, like you said, Yamaha is a massive brand. I mean, really, the bicycle division in the big picture is really small for Yamaha. But Yamaha was, a lot of people don't know, but Yamaha was the first brand to actually make a pedal assist bicycle.
Really?
Yeah, back in 1993. So they're celebrating their 30-year anniversary of electric assist, pedal assist bicycles. So that's kind of an interesting fact that a lot of people don't know.
Yeah.
This year I got to go to Japan to do some testing on some new stuff we're working on, and got to see some of those old bikes in the Yamaha museum. It was pretty cool.
Yeah, I actually had no idea.
Yeah.
Where have you landed on the e-bike thing from day one? Like, were you ever skeptical about it?
Yeah, I was. I'm good friends with Troy Lee, and Troy Lee was on the bandwagon right from the beginning.
My man.
Yeah, Troy was on it right from the beginning, and he was like doing these e-bike races. He was calling them the electric boogaloos.
Yeah, okay.
And they were these, you know, they were laps, right? Like almost like motocross style jumps and stuff. And he was always trying to get me to go do them. And at that time, the bike sponsor I had didn't have an e-bike, so I was like, oh, I'm not going to do it. But eventually, you know, I saw this segment just like growing and growing and growing. And I was like, it kind of opened my eyes. One year I went to Eurobike and I was talking to a bunch of brands about next year. And they were like, yeah, if you're into doing something with us with e-bikes, you know, we'd be interested. And that really kind of like opened my eyes like, all right, I'm not getting younger, right? I'm not going to be winning world championships anymore. What's the next direction I need to start looking at for my future?
Yeah.
And so that's kind of really when I started, being more open to e-bikes. And not that I hadn't ridden some before, but I wasn't super into it.
Yeah, it's funny. I'm like Troy. The day an e-bike came out, I'm like, bang, get me on that thing. Like, I've always looked at it as I do this for the downhill sections.
Yeah.
So, and they still challenge you, and it's still a workout. So
Yeah.
I was like, how about I just do, instead of 2 downhills in a day, I'm going to do 6 or 7. And and Glenn used to always say, it's just behind bars. Just got to get behind bars. And it's just more time behind bars going down the hill, which is what I was there for. And man, I was just in from basically day one. So to hear that Troy was too, I'm like, all right, my man.
Yeah.
But there was people like, you were so good at riding. Like I'm sure just you normally is what it would feel like for me being on an e-bike at times, like there's such a big skill and fitness gap and just like a base of pedaling over years and years.
Yeah.
And I think I always just saw it as like, this for plebs like me, this just opens up the hill,
Well, I think, there's a lot of misconceptions around e-bikes. I mean, from everything from, they're cheater bikes to, you don't get a workout to, you can go whatever, 20 miles an hour up any hill, to, these other, Surons and these kind of things that people that don't really know what pedal assist or e-bikes are, they kind of classify those into that category. And so I think there's still a lot of education that needs to be done with the general public, with what pedal assist bikes are and what you can get out of them. I mean, whether it's from a recreation standpoint, from a fun standpoint, or from a training standpoint, really, there is a lot of benefits to them. And you can obviously be a bit lazy and ride them and have a lot of fun. Or if you want to get a workout, or if you're going to go do a race, like I do some of these races and I tell people all the time, I'm like, racing an e-bike is actually harder than racing a regular bike.
For real?
Yeah. It's way harder because, well, the bike is supposed to be a class 1 e-bike. And I don't know if you know what class 1 is, but it's basically, so there's 3 classes of e-bikes, of pedal assist bikes. There's class 1, class 2, and class 3. Class 1 is pedal assist up to 20 miles an hour.
Yeah.
Class 3 is pedal assist up to 27 miles an hour. And class 2 is pedal assist and or throttle up to 20 miles an hour. So those are kind of the 3 like legal classes of bicycles, e-bikes in the U.S. at least. Some of those numbers I think change in Europe. I know class 1 is a little bit lower. I think they go 20 kilometers an hour.
Okay.
So, but Surons and Super 73s and some of these other things out there, they're
well, they're kind of like just an electric motorbike.
Yes, exactly.
So I think saying pedal assist is probably better than saying e-bike, because the e-bike's kind of like a blanket category of electric bikes.
Right.
So I guess you're talking about the pedal assist, like mountain bike versions of it.
Yeah. And I mean, so going back to that and like how difficult they can be to ride if you want them. I mean, there's, again, misconceptions. Class 1 is basically what people race.
Yeah.
UCI even has like a world championship for e-biking now. But they assist you up to 20 miles an hour. That doesn't mean you can ride, up any hill at 20 miles an hour. I guess, coming from the motorcycle world, it'd be like, if you get on a YZ80 and some little, 10-year-old gets on a YZ80, like he's going to smoke you.
Yeah.
Just because he can go up the hill at 40 doesn't mean you're going to go up that same hill at 40, right?
Yeah,
It only
100%.
has so much power. It's just a little motorcycle, basically, right? And with the e-bike, it's only got so much power.
Well, I think the better, like a good way to describe it maybe is like it's more of a flat ground. It'll assist you on, or like being on flat ground is a better way to feel it, I guess, because yeah, you just can't, it's not like it's got enough power to get you to 20 up a hill. It's basically like that's where the pedal assist is going to not work, essentially, right?
Well, it'll work on a hill too, but again, kind of going back to, you know, the motorcycle analogy, is if you're on a YZ80 and you're in fifth gear, you know, like trying to go up a steep hill, like it's just going to bog out and it's not going to do anything for you, right? Like you got to be in whatever, first gear.
Yeah.
And it's the same on a bike, right? Like it has power, but it only has so much power, and you really got to be in the right gear to have that power. If you can overpower an e-bike.
Yeah.
So like there's a little bit of learning curve if you want to try to get the most out of an e-bike. I love doing technical climbs on my e-bike.
Yeah, that's hard. Like there's a skill just in that.
Yeah. There's a skill in it, and there's like a finesse too of being in the right gear, not putting too much power into your pedal strokes, but obviously being in the right gear because you want the motor to be helping you. And if in your head, like you might see this super steep section with like maybe a rock, and you're like, oh fuck, I gotta like get on it to get up that, because that's how you would do it on a regular, you know, non e-bike. And if you do that on an e-bike, the motor will just cut out because you're overpowering the motor.
Yeah, yeah.
So.
And so when you get in that race situation, it makes it just as hard / harder than an acoustic bike.
It does, because I mean the bikes are a lot heavier typically, and you know, if you and I were racing, if we were climbing a hill, for me to whatever, I don't know your fitness, but like let's just say we're going up a 10-minute hill, I might be able to put 2 minutes on you on a 10-minute climb, or 3 minutes on you.
Yeah.
Whereas on an e-bike, whether you're in shape or not, and whether I'm in shape or not, like I'll probably still beat you up the hill, but I'm not going to put 2 or 3 minutes on you.
Yeah.
It's kind of like the great equalizer. It brings everybody closer together. So it's really hard to put distance on people. I mean, obviously, like on the downhills, when it gets more technical, that's where, you know, skills. Yeah.
It's true in what you say about that. Like when I first got my dad an e-bike, like years ago, when me and my brother were still doing my brother still does a fair bit of pedaling nowadays. But we got dad a bike, and he's 50 or 60 now, and he could instantly just keep up with all of us on our rides, and we'd just go with all the boys and their rides that he would never want to do. And all of a sudden, it's not only that he wanted to do them, it's that he could do them and then keep up with everyone, you know. Exactly. And he gets to talk the whole time, and he's just not, his ass isn't hanging out and his tongue's not in the chain. And that, to me, I think is one of like the coolest benefits of it. And then I think as well, it opens up the more adventure lane. You know, have you been to Derby yet in Tassie?
No.
Okay.
I've seen a lot of photos.
That has to be something that is on your bucket list. You got to go there with Glenn and Hans.
Yeah.
Like it would be so sick. But they've got this ride called Atlas, and it goes, I can't remember the exact distance. I think at the end of the ride we did 50 Ks basically, but it's a point to point kind of ride. You get shuttled way out, and then you climb up and down these ridge lines like all through the rainforest. And I mean, it's a few hours. You stop at a pub, you have lunch, and then you do like a big climb and like another, and that you just do as a group. Like there's not very often you could do a 50K ride with all varying skill levels and speeds, and it actually you stay in a group, and it is like a kind of an adventure type of ride, you know. And I think just that segment of riding, whether it's two wheels or whether it's like motors or bikes or anything, I think that whole adventure segment of riding is just now getting so popular.
Yeah. I mean, the only thing you got to worry about on stuff like that with the pedal assist bike is, you know, your battery life.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, when I go do a ride where it's going to be far or I've never done it before, I'm always like, okay, kind of monitoring my battery, right? Like what level, because like on the Yamaha e-bikes or mountain bikes, we have got like 5 or 6 different modes, right? And so they all have like different power assists. The Yamaha has a different tuning on different levels, so like a couple of the levels actually produce the same amount of power, but it's just kind of how that power is delivered.
Huh, okay,
yeah,
that's cool.
Yeah. So I mean, I know, like I saw you just riding the Yamaha, out at Glen Helen, right? Like I know they have a full tuning app, for their motorcycles. So, not that there's a lot of tuning you can do on an app with the Yamaha e-bike, but
they're kind of built in the same kind of capacity.
Yeah.
That's sick. What else is there any other, like, are any of the, well, what's next for e-bikes, do you think? Do you think that, or pedal assist, like, do you think that they'll start doing like clutches or any of that sort of, like any features when it comes to that? Like, or is it the technology, like they'll probably keep it just where it's at?
I don't know about clutches because because you have to pedal.
Yeah.
So you're kind of, maybe pedaling is kind of how you clutch a bike a little bit, right? You're kind of monitoring how much force you're putting into it.
Yeah.
But I don't know, maybe we'll get away from gears and go to some sort of transmission.
That'd be cool.
It's been long overdue, but at some point we're going to have to get rid of a derailleur. And
I know, isn't it crazy how long that thing's been around?
Yeah. But I think, just like with the electric car market and now motorcycle market, the technology with the batteries and the motors is like changing so rapidly, right? Like batteries are heavy.
Yeah.
So Yamaha is real big on efficiency too. Like on our current e-bikes, our battery is still probably on the smaller side compared to a lot of companies and kind of where they're going. But they're real big into the efficiency thing and how they program. Yamaha is the only one that makes a bike, makes the electronics, makes the motor.
Yeah, right.
Everybody else is piecing it together with their own things, right? They don't make a motor, so they're they're getting whatever motor they want and building the bike around that motor.
Yeah,
and then maybe taking those electronics or maybe building their own electronics or getting that battery. So.
Yeah, that is pretty cool then. Yeah, all right. I'm keen. I need to ride one now.
We're gonna ride.
I know. Yeah, I've just been trying to get the time to do it.
I know, but I'm not gonna let you off the hook.
No, I'm keen. Do you ride much with Hans up there?
A little bit.
He's never around though, right?
No, he's around. Yeah, he kind of comes and goes, but yeah, we ride. Mainly ride e-bikes these days when I ride with Hans, yeah.
And so what's the split these days of e-bike versus acoustic bikes?
Man, it's hard to say, but there's definitely more and more e-bikes out there, right? Like you can get more laps in, right? Like on the e-bike than you can on a regular bike. But we do a Wednesday night ride group in Laguna, and I would say it's probably on a regular. It's probably 75% e-bikes.
No way. And what about you personally? How much? What's your split?
For me, I would say it kind of really depends, like who I'm riding with and what I'm doing.
Yeah. Okay.
Maybe overall I'm riding a regular bike a little bit more than an e-bike, mainly because I train some kids and we do a lot of riding on regular bikes, but we also put in the e-bike for some training too, just because it's good for a recovery day. Like back in my day when I was training, I would come home for races. I'd do little spins up and down the coast. That was kind of my recovery day, right? Try to find the flattest ground, which is along PCH here. But nowadays, it's pretty nice. You can get on an e-bike, and in Laguna, the climbs are really steep, and it doesn't matter how easy you're going. It's still, can be a fairly hard effort going up any hill.
Yeah.
So now with the e-bikes, it's like you can put it in, a high power mode and pedal up and not have to work too hard, and then still have fun on the downhills versus just cruising along PCH and having to worry about getting hit by a car.
Yeah. Well, and then you kind of like it's always skills based too.
Yeah.
You could just literally use that for people that are serious about their riding. You almost using that as like drilling time, where you're practicing certain things on like descents and as opposed to just mindlessly, doing the ride.
Yeah, I mean, you can do that for sure. I think, like anything, if you get to the highest level, it's the bikes are quite different, right? Like I always, I used to hang out with MotoGP rider named Alex Hoffman.
Yeah,
he's a German rider, and he does like all the announcing for German TV and Austrian and Germany and stuff, and still rides like KTM testing and stuff. But anyways, I used to laugh, like, and I'm pretty sure it's still like this with all those guys. They never ride street bikes, right? Unless they're
never.
like at the track testing a MotoGP bike. And I'm like, why don't you have like a street bike? Like, you can't go to the local, track and do some track. And he's like, it's just not. It's so far different that it doesn't really do much for you.
Yeah, a lot of those guys just ride motocross.
Yeah.
Or like dirt track stuff.
Yeah.
That's kind of the main thing that they'll do. But yeah, so you think that pretty much applies in the same with
a little bit, right? I think it depends what discipline you're into, but the bikes are quite a bit heavier, right? So if you're a downhill racer, you're riding a bike that's probably 35-ish pounds nowadays and has 8 to 9 inches of travel front and back, and these crazy slack head angles and things like that. Whereas most of the e-bikes are not like that, right? They're 50 plus pounds. They're 6 or 7 inches of travel. They're made for going up and down. So I mean, not to say it can't help. It can, but I think at the top level, right? It's quite different.
Yeah. And so how much riding are you doing these days in general? Like, it's pretty sick that to be like your age and just still fully in and able to, like, your career is still going, like, not necessarily in a competitive sense anymore in terms of like UCI 4-cross titles and like that level, but you're still so active in the sport and it's still like your job essentially, which is, I think, one of the coolest things about mountain biking if you do it right.
Yeah. No. Well, thank you, first of all. But yeah, I agree. I just love riding bicycles. So I'll always ride bikes, whether it's my job or not. But yeah, I don't know. I've just been fortunate enough to keep it going. And I know, at least with the racing side of motocross, it kind of seems like, there's a few guys that are kind of able to keep it going after, obviously guys like Carmichael and stuff and McGrath are having no problem at it. But, there's other guys like, I'm good friends with Cole Seeley and, when he stopped and he's just like kind of trying to find his feet, what to do next and stuff like that. So I think mountain biking, it seems like there's a bit more opportunity after your race career to kind of keep things going. The motorcycle world, right? There's only, I don't know, obviously it's growing now a bit, but maybe 8 to 10 manufacturers.
Yeah.
We have hundreds.
Yeah, that's so true, eh? Yeah, and you got like, I don't know, it just seems like you're able to stay relevant in a way. Like it's just that people, I don't know, it's definitely a weird one to think about and explain because like, I love Cole. Like, he's a good friend of mine as well. Yeah. Epic dude. He still has so much to offer to the industry. Yeah. And he has so much like ability on a motorcycle and there's so much that he can provide, but it just it doesn't seem like there's just really natural fits to stay riding and to essentially like stay employed. Whereas a guy like you, even Hans, like look at he's bloody Glenn. I mean, he's different in the sense that he's building trails, but again, it's just like he can spend a lifetime in mountain biking in that way.
Yeah. I mean, Cole, when he was racing, obviously I was hanging out with him a lot, training him and stuff, and he was always tinkering with things like, whether it was like these, he was all into leather, making like leather wallets for a while. He's into music. He's into like doing these, 3D printing, stuff. Like he's pretty talented in a lot of different areas. And I know a lot lately because I've been talking to him a lot more recently. He's been he got like little engineering CAD degree, and he's been doing a lot of like, he's been on the computer designing stuff, and he's been doing some bike stuff. So we've been bouncing ideas off, and I've been trying some of his little prototype things here and there. So yeah, it's cool. I hope he finds something that he really loves and is successful at it, because he's a cool guy. He is a really cool guy.
And did you think that your career would last the way that it did? Like because you were like the top racer, dude. Like you were at the very peak of the sport, And so, and when you're that guy, you don't necessarily spend much time thinking about retirement, I'm guessing, because you're so like in the thick of it. Yeah. And then you probably just thought that once you stop winning, like that would be it.
Yeah, I mean, I didn't really have a plan when I was racing. I mean, I just raced bikes because I loved it, and yeah, it was just fun, right? And eventually, I mean, my career started off racing BMX since I was like 4, and I just kind of grew up racing BMX and raced. Me and Jeremy used to race each other. I know Jeremy was on here, and Jeremy's been a great friend since we were little, racing BMX together. And eventually, I just I got to a point where I was at a race with my parents, and I was like, kind of getting a little burnt out. And I was like, Dad, maybe I should race pro at this race, like kind of over racing for trophies. And he's like, let's do it. And so back then, it was just like, that's what you did. So I signed up.
So you just signed up as pro. So there was just like 2 classes, and then there was one that you never signed up.
Yeah. So there's like, age group. Yeah. Like I always raced expert age group, but then there was A pro and double A pro.
Yes. This is BMX.
Yeah. And, back then you had to make like a certain amount of money in A pro before you could go to double A. So anyways, I signed up 17 and a half pro, made like, I don't remember exactly, like $800 or something that weekend. And I was like, yeah,
that's solid.
And that was kind of like the new fire under my ass. I was like, I'm into this, like, making some money. And so started racing pro and making some money, and graduated high school, started going to junior college, doing that for a few years, got my AA from a junior college, was like planning to transfer to like a Cal State. At that time, I
what did you want to do?
It's kind of funny that we're here, but I used to take like some radio classes,
like
with the local radio station. I was. So the communication part I liked, but I didn't know. I was still young.
Yeah.
But I raced for Mongoose on the BMX side of things.
Yeah.
They had a mountain bike team, and there's some great mountain bikers that came from BMX that were becoming really successful. And I was like, maybe I should give this a try. And that was kind of the start of it. I went to a couple mountain bike races and
smashed them, and you're like, sweet, easy money.
Yeah, like the first. So I raced a couple just amateur races, and then so 1993 was my first year racing pro on mountain bikes. First national was in Big Bear, which is 2 hours from here, and ended up getting 5th in the downhill at that race. And I remember I was pumped because I beat out Johnny T for like the last, and mountain bikes, there's 5 guys on the podium, and he was 6th at the race. So I was like, my first race, squeaked out Johnny T by a few tenths of a second or something. And then went to the next Norba National, and I won the downhill. And I was like, it's on. And just kind of ramped up from there.
Dude, that's so cool. So there's a lot to unpack there, but what was it like racing Jeremy as a kid? Like, did you you know, when you know someone when they're young and then you see what they accomplished in their life, when you look back, does it make sense?
Not to the degree that he got to, probably not. I mean, Jeremy was great on a BMX bike too, but he wasn't like, you know, crazy, just smashing people, winning everything like he did in Supercross. No. But you know, we were young. I think, I don't remember exactly what age, you know, he got out of BMX, but it was probably 13 or 14, somewhere right around there, because I remember going to his house to ride motorcycles. Like, he had the track, you know, at his parents' house off the freeway, and going there, you know, a couple of years into his career, and he, you know, he was way better than us then on a motorcycle. He was riding every day, but yeah, I mean, to see where he took that was, I mean, it was awesome. Yeah, super proud of him and everything he's accomplished, and yeah, to just have that lifelong friendship I've had with him.
Yeah, it's crazy when you do know someone for so long.
Yeah.
And yeah, like you see, but some people, it just makes sense where you're like, even, you know, like the Showtime thing where it's like, oh, he was always like that, and you know, you can kind of see their personality play out on that kind of scale, you know. But it's amazing what BMX did for his foundations. And then Cole Seeley is another guy that grew up racing a lot of BMX and riding a lot of BMX, and like Hayden Deegan spent a lot of time riding BMX. It's kind of, it's not a secret. You know, there's so many guys that made it in that, or like had a foundation in that did super well when it came to Supercross.
Yeah, I mean, you know, I listened to the podcast you did with Jeremy, and I mean, if you asked me all those same questions you asked Jeremy, my answers probably would have been almost identical to everything Jeremy said. I mean, he's awesome, but you know, I know he said in that podcast, you know, like on a BMX bike, you don't have suspension, you're on 20-inch wheels, like you have to be perfect. You can't OJ shit, you know, on a BMX bike, you know, or it gets bad real quick. So you have to be precise, and as you know, he was always way more precise than everybody, and Cole was, you know, maybe too precise, right? Cole was always super smooth, and we would go to Sheep Hills, which is just you know, literally right down the street here. I don't know if you've ever been.
I've never been there. I want to go at some point. I'd love to build. I need to do a bit of mountain bike building in my life. I need to get some bikes going. I'd love to get a little dirt jumper for like some pump tracks and stuff like that.
I'm pretty sure Villapoto has one. Like, I remember a few years ago, he was like, Lopes, really? I want to build up a pump track bike, you know, blah, blah, blah. And he built one up, and I don't think he's ever used it.
Never rode it. Well, he doesn't ever answer his phone, so good luck trying to get it. Yeah, good luck trying to get it out of him.
We'll just go over his house. And
just clip it from him. But yeah, I mean, there's such a solid fundamentals in it, and it's just been proven in a bunch of different people.
Yeah. I mean, it's the foundation for everything. You know, it's funny when, you know, I don't know, like you're on a road ride or even a cross country ride, people that have gotten into cycling a little bit later in life, and they don't have those fundamentals that you learn as a kid. I do a lot of, not a lot, but I do skills coaching just like on the side. I train a couple of kids like full time.
Yeah.
But I also, you know, take on random people who just want like a day lesson or half day lesson. And, you know, the number one thing is these people, you know, they're 30, 40-year-old person. They only have an hour or 2 hours, right? They just want to go ride.
Yeah.
They don't want to like spend, you know, an hour or two like trying to figure out how to do a wheelie or how to bunny hop up a curb, right? And that's what we did as kids, right? We just came over from school and we're like, let's go to the jumps, you know, let's spend all day there, right? Like, so you figure out and you learn all these like basic fundamentals. And it's funny when I go with people who don't have that youth of on a bicycle and they don't know how to bunny hop a curb, right? You're like, you don't know how to bunny hop a curb?
That's day one.
Yeah, like, dude, like, I mean, for me, that's just like safety kind of riding, right? What happens if you get pinched up a curb? You need to know how to bunny hop it, right? Like,
have you seen some crazy wrecks on road bikes with dudes that just don't have those skills?
Yeah, I mean, sometimes they happen
just because it's going to be a wreck.
Yeah, it's just, you know, people are crossing wheels or, you know, there's a lot of etiquette when it comes to riding road bikes. But yeah, I've seen some gnarly crashes, and man, knock on wood, I've never had any big crashes on the road.
Man, we had this dude where there was a few years ago, like I was doing a fair bit of riding, but then I kind of like moved away from the hill, and I was like, my bike just became a milk run bike after that. But we were doing a bunch of riding. We went down to one of the trails in Noosa, which is like north of the Gold Coast on the Sunshine Coast. They got awesome trails there, but there's like most of the ride would just be like a tarmac climb, and then you'd kind of go down the fingers of the trails. And they use it for luging, like it's a closed road, so there's so many cyclists on it. And I hadn't thought about this dude's crash until you said, like, a lot of people just didn't go out riding bikes. Because we're on the outside of the road, and this dude just comes flying down the road. And we were like riding 3 wide kind of thing. You can't see any of the corners around. And so this guy just comes around. We're 3 wide but on our side of the lane, and he's just fully seen us and just turned right instead of trying to keep going left into this cliff and just obliterated himself, dude. Smashed his bike to bits, fully shattered his helmet. He was fine. Like, he was all right. He starts like yelling at us, and we're like, bro, you were never stopping for this corner. But it makes sense. Like, he probably just never grew up riding a bike.
Yeah. But I mean, I'm sure you've at some point seen some of these Tour de France crashes, big stage race. I mean, dude, they're gnarly. There's, and those guys are pretty much naked, right? They're not wearing anything other than a little helmet,
and the helmets are tiny, dude.
Yeah. They're brutal. I mean, especially, those final sprint crashes, gnarly. They're going fast, 40 something miles an hour.
That sport almost doesn't make sense. Like, did you watch the Netflix thing on it?
A little bit.
Was it good?
Yeah. I think, especially for like the average person, right? I think it's good. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. I know it's probably be pretty interesting, but that's a psycho sport.
Yeah.
Like the drugs you have to do, the miles you have to to sign. Like, I got a friend. He was on like a kind of a B tier Italian cycling team, and he literally got on the team. But before he signed with the team, they were like, okay, so here's the drugs you have to do. Here's the doctor, like, just fully.
What year was that?
He's my age. So, like, it wasn't that long ago, maybe 10 years ago.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. They were fully just like, all right, here's the program.
Wow.
Like, you got to jump on. And he was like, all right, sweet.
Yeah.
He was like, man, it was crazy.
Yeah, I thought that, that whole drug era was kind of behind that sport.
I don't know.
I'm sure, there's always going to be somebody who wants to cheat or, like somebody who's trying to outsmart the system, be ahead of the system, bend the rules, whatever it is. But I know it's gotten harder and harder, right? They're trying to make it clean. So I think especially, from back in the, back in the days of Lance days, right? It's definitely a lot cleaner than those days.
But you just got to think how hard it is on the human body. Like, it's borderline inhumane to do it, and even like, imagine how hard it would be to do on drugs. Like, right. even if you are doing that, it's not making it way easier. It's still insanely hard to do. So just a crazy sport just to even sign up for it,
Yeah, I think but I also think a lot of people, it's hard to comprehend something that you're so far, removed from, or look at you on a motorcycle. I don't know how much you ride, but it seems like quite a bit. I mean, if you go line up against Eli Tomac, right, you're gonna be like,
I'm just not doing it.
Yeah. Whereas, like, if you had never like lined up against him or actually seen it in person or been on a track with him,
you'd look at it and be like,
yeah, you're like, oh yeah, he's fast, but it wouldn't be like that fast, right? And then you see him fly by you, and you're like, or you're on the track and you're like, he passes you and he's gone, and you're just like, holy shit, like.
And that's the reality of it.
That's the reality. Yeah. And I think that's the reality because I get it with people that I ride with, right? Like, random people will just be like, "Oh, you're fit, you're strong," and I didn't specialize in going uphill or having endurance fitness. That wasn't my specialty, but I'm pretty decent at it because I do it a lot.
Well, you just have a lifetime of base.
Yeah, and I have a big base, but those people don't really have a reality of how gnarly the top guys are. Like the Nino Schitzer of the world, Vanderpool, Pitcock. Those guys are ridiculous how fit and strong they are, and unless you get to witness that firsthand, it's you just think the guy that's twice as fast as you is the gnarliest dude.
Yeah. I saw a guy. I'm not very knowledgeable in the cycling world, but there was a big thing went around Instagram where one of the big Tour de France guys ran a marathon, and it was his first marathon. He never trained for it. He run like some insane time, and his splits were crazy. Like it was just like a freak marathon.
Yeah.
And it really puts into perspective. You just go, wow, like what an actual animal.
Yeah.
To do such a crazy good time.
Right.
No, you're just that elite
right.
that you can go and do something that for like most people never run a marathon in their life.
Right. And I think some of those sports are a little different because there's I'm not saying that there's no skill involved, but it's more about the engine than the skill, right? Like I always try to portray that to people whether they're downhill mountain biker or a motocross ride. Like at a certain point, it doesn't matter how strong and how fit you are. If your lap times are 10 seconds a lap, I don't care how fit you are. You got a lot of other things you need to work on before you get to the fitness part of it.
And to bridge that gap, like so for me, like I would be a perfect example of that, right? So like this year, I trained all year to do the World Vets at Glen Helen, and dude, I was nowhere. Like it was so bad, and but for me, I did good, you know, like I was fit enough to do all the motos. Like I was definitely got like tired. I wasn't like I was fucking super ready and at my peak,
right.
But that's like a normal person doing an abnormal amount of riding, and I was running a bunch, and like, so in what I could actually physically do while keeping my life together,
right.
I did.
Right.
And I was fucking nowhere,
yeah.
you know? So, but then if you took that to the next extreme, which would be like, hey, Jace, there you go. All the Yamahas you need, full team bike. You can pit out of the truck. You can have a year to just train and get ready. I would still be nowhere.
Right.
Like, so the skill gap that you're talking about in our sport, and I think, well, our sports in terms of like mountain biking or when you're going down the hills, it's just so skill based, and it's almost not even skill. Like there's just some like special talent that you've got to be able to go that fast. Like the level in downhill these days is just insane, you know?
Yeah.
So yeah, it doesn't matter what you did to my fitness, I could never be that guy.
Yeah. No, and I'm with you. I'm never gonna be a cross country racer. It was never in my cards, right? Like, so I think people that want to be something, whether it's a bike racer or a motocross racer or whatever, I think there's at some point you got to just go like, hey, I'm never gonna be at that level, right? Like, if you're running a 15-second 100-meter dash in high school, you're probably never going to be an Olympic sprinter. This is not in your cards, right? You better pick another, discipline of running. Maybe maybe you need to be a marathon runner or a mid-distance runner or something, but you're not going to be a sprinter.
Yeah. What do you think about the talent that you'd see in, like, let's say the top level downhill dudes or top level moto? Like, you've seen both. Like, what does a person have that makes them special in the way that you're describing?
I think there's probably a few different things, but like this kid that I train right now, his name's Ryan Pinkerton. He's 18 years old. 2024 will be the first year that he is in the elite category. He's been in the junior category. I've known him and been riding with him since he was like 12. Since he was little, he was fast. Like the first time I ever rode with him, I was like, this kid is fast, right? Like,
Yeah.
and you know, so obviously now he's at the point where going downhill. I mean, he's way faster than me for sure. You know, like way faster. And when we ride trail bikes together, I know all these trails here really well, as does he. He lives here, but for the most part, I can still like keep him inside and keep pretty close to him, except for when it gets really gnarly, right? Like when it gets to the point where it's like if you don't hit that corner, or it's like you're threading the needle, or it's just there's not a lot of room for error. I think that's where he really, excels from me. I think part of it is, I don't want to crash. Part of it is just I'm not at that comfort level. I don't have the confidence like he has. And then I think also it is maybe just the ability to process and read terrain at those speeds.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think I'd love to just one day go on like a full neuroscience bender. Just have like an open budget to be like, all right, what's going on in a person's brain if we like really look at this? I don't even know how you'd look at it, but I'm sure and I'm convinced that I have the same feeling of, fuck, I need to hit the brakes as what he does. It's just happening in a real different place.
Right.
So it's like, what is that? Is it, there's like these muscles in your eyes that stabilize your eyes, and it's like, does some people have like this, I guess, a better natural muscle function in those muscles, and it keeps your eyes more stable? Like, is there a time perception?
Right.
Like there's so many things that could be at play, and I bet there would be a common thread. Like you could test Eli Tomac and then you could test him, and like there might be a range that they're in, and then maybe I'm under here and maybe you're just on, so it's like I would love to know the specific categories of what is it, because it has to be something in the brain. Like it has to be something that's going on mentally.
Yeah, no, I would agree with you. I think it's, it's a number of little things, right, that all add up to one. I mean, it's like when you dissect, lap times at motorcycles. It's like,
yeah, true.
It's unless there's a big mistake, it's not just one thing, right? It's like a little bit here, a little bit there, a little, and then you all add them all up, and you're like, there's their second.
Yeah, no, that's actually quite true as well. And it's like it might not even be obvious as like just one thing, and it's like it might be these tiny half percentages that are not even visible to the naked eye, because that has to be the level. You look at a lap time between Chase Sexton and Jet Lawrence. Like SMX did some pretty cool side-by-sides at practice from the SMX rounds, where they had basically the same camera angles, like the exact, they started the stopwatch at the exact same time, and you could see this split of Jet and Sexton doing this corner, and it was like a different line by a little bit. The technique was different, like Jet stood up longer, whatever. And it was like the exact time.
Yeah.
So you just think about, there had to be something different that, they were doing. Well, there was a lot physically that they were doing differently, but then it's like, you couldn't even see anything, like, and then the stopwatch couldn't see anything. So it's like, how far would you have to go around the track to like visibly even be able to see something?
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, motocross and downhill is so, they're alike in a lot of ways, but they're so different in so many ways. And I think, qualifying is more like downhill racing, right? It's just you against the stopwatch, and not necessarily all those lines that they're doing in qualifying are race lines. Whereas in downhill mountain biking, they are, right? We don't have to worry about somebody insiding and parking us.
Yeah.
Well, in downhilling, right? Like in four cross, I did. But But so like for me, and I guess four cross would be closer to supercross.
Yeah.
I mean, I could specifically remember a couple of races where I took different lines and rhythms and stuff in qualifying than I ever would think about doing in the race, just because, nobody's going to go around the outside of me in this turn. Like I just knew it wasn't going to happen. Right. So, but I could take that for qualifying. Maybe it would get me through the next rhythm section better.
Yeah. So you go from BMX into mountain biking, and you kind of just hit the timing right for your skill set. Because what year was the first four cross?
Well, the sport kind of changed a little bit, right? Like it went at the beginning. I raced downhill and dual slalom, and then the UCI dual slalom wasn't like a rainbow, world championship event at the beginning.
It's kind of like a pre-event, pre-race, kind of like it was like a part of the whole thing.
Yeah, they had it at the world championships, but it wasn't. They didn't give it a rainbow jersey, like a gold medal. And then so eventually the UCI did make it a world championship event, but they changed it. They didn't call it dual slalom. They called it dual, and the difference was dual slalom, separate courses. You swap sides. It's a time differential thing.
Yeah.
And excuse me, the winner was obviously the guy with the fastest overall time. It was a little bit hard for people to understand.
Yeah.
Right? Kind of like straight rhythm, right? Like people are like, wait, he won the first one. Wait, he lost the second one. But he's, you gotta kind of understand a little bit more. So they went to dual, which was just two guys. Started on like, your own gate, but then it just became one course, and the first guy to cross the line was the winner.
Yeah.
Well, that only lasted 2 years because that just turned into be like just a slam fest. Yeah. You get the whole shot, and then all you're worried about is, all right, where's this fucking guy gonna try to slam me, right? And it did become that. So it was pretty much just like contact sport. So then after 2 years, they turned it into four cross, which for those that don't know is four guys, racing together at a time. Top two go to the next round. I think that was maybe like 2000, I don't know, 4-ish.
Yeah.
When that became the official.
Yeah. And how like that pretty much just plays straight into your wheelhouse. And it was a few. So who were the top dogs back at the time? It was like you, Eric Carter, like Cedric. Who else was in there?
Yeah,
I mean, you'd have a lot of the downhill guys would do it too, but you guys really, there's like a few specialists kind of emerged out of it.
Yeah, during those days, there was a lot of guys that, myself included at the beginning, I raced downhill and slalom or four cross, whatever at that time. And then kind of the sports back then were just, I don't know, maybe 2005, 6, 7, we're just starting to kind of like get a little bit more specialized, and people were like picking one or the other. There was still a handful of guys like Cedric Gracia, for instance. He was always wanted to do both.
Yeah.
But I mean, different guys were kind of like my main competitors at different eras. Mike King, like you said, Eric Carter. And then there was Wade Boots from Australia.
Yeah, that's right.
He was a big competitor for years. And then after him, it was...
Jared Graves was pretty solid
Jared
as well.
Yep. Obviously, Jared was kind of, for me, a big competitor at the tail end of my... probably the last like 3 or 4 years of my four-cross career. Then there was a guy named Michael Prokop from the Czech Republic.
Oh, yeah.
He was really fast. So kind of had like almost like probably 3 or 4 different like little segments of my career where there was different guys that were kind of like my main challengers.
And was it just something that you really gravitated towards? Like it just fully played into your skill set? Like what was it about four cross that, like, because you were so, like you said, you kind of just went through all these different eras. It just seemed like the whole time it was a sport, it was like your sport.
Yeah. Well, like I said, I raced downhill for a long time, and then I got out of downhilling just because I got on a team that didn't have a good bike or good suspension and tires, and I wasn't like unbelievable at downhill, but I was pretty good. I won 3 national titles and had some podiums at some World Cups, but I kind of got out of that just because of the team I was on and the bike that I was on. You need a good bike and good equipment to do good in that sport. And at that point in my career, I wasn't getting that. The slalom, four cross stuff, it wasn't so much about the bike because we were riding hardtails mainly. So it was more just about, your gate starts and your power and your skills on the track. And so I really kind of just, basically that was the end of my downhill career, started just focusing on this. And then I really just started to become more like dominant at this discipline. So then I was kind of just embraced it, right? And just went with it. And I was like, okay, this is my bread and butter, right? Like I'm just going to, almost like Jeremy with Supercross. I mean, he did good in outdoor too. I did good in downhill, but I mean, he was more dominant at that. And so, so I just kind of rode that train for quite a long time, and eventually just started getting a little bit bored of it and was like, it's, what if I win another race in this discipline, it's not going to, give me the high or really change my life in any way. And I saw the sport of enduro starting to take off. So I decided to retire in 2007. I won the World Championships in Scotland, and after that year, I was like, okay, I'm done. But since I won the World Championships, I did a few races in 2008 because I had the rainbow jersey. Yeah. I did a few races in 2008 in the four cross, but I already I signed a deal with Ibis Bikes, who at the time were kind of at the forefront of making carbon fiber bikes. Yep. And they were making full suspension, more like trail / enduro bikes. And they and I wanted to kind of go that direction because I saw it taking off. So I signed with them, and I really started racing more enduro stuff. And like in my head, I was like, okay, I'm going to stop, traveling the world and, just kind of do these races, fun races. Well, that actually turned into almost like more traveling and stuff, because when you're racing the World Cups and you're focused on that, it's like you do those 7 or 8 races and maybe don't do any others, or maybe just a few here and there. Whereas with this discipline of enduro at the time, I was like, oh, I'm going to go do that one. I'm going to do that one. I'm going to do that. Like I didn't have like a set schedule, and it was fun. It was different. It was new. And so I kind of went that direction. And I mean, that's probably the main style of riding that I ride the most these days and that I race when I do race. But I ride cross country. I ride gravel. Obviously, I ride a lot of e-bikes. I still go dirt jumping at Sheep Hills. Even a few years after I retired from World Cup racing, the UCI introduced this new discipline called Sprint Eliminator.
Oh, yeah.
And so they were both supposed to be like real short cross-country style races, 2 to 3 minutes long, but in kind of a 4-cross format. Yeah. 4 guys at a time to advance. And so I was like, oh, that sounds interesting. I think I could probably do pretty good at this. And so I was like, I went to a few test events, and then the next year they made it like an official UCI World Cup, series. So I was like, okay, I'm back. I'm doing this. I'm back on. I was 40, and I was like, I'm coming back. I'm going to do these. And so I trained my ass off for these events. I went to the first one in Houffalize, Belgium, and I won. I won the very first sprint eliminator race, and it was awesome. Like to win that race after training for it, and taking on.
How many years would that have been since your last World Cup win?
Probably 3 years.
Oh, sweet. Yeah. So it's like a good bit of time. It's enough. It's enough to not know whether you could still, you know, like actually win again.
Right. Yeah. And it was like a new discipline, and at that time I was 40, right? Like I was already, pushing past probably what most people thought, myself included. But so I won that one, and then I went to the next one in the Czech Republic, and didn't do too good in that one, and then went to another one in France, and ended up third at that one, and then I just decided to pull the plug on it because I mean, for a couple of reasons. A, it was so friggin' hard. Like,
Really?
the hardest racing I've ever done in my life.
Wow.
Yeah, physically the hardest racing. Because you can't physically go 100% for a minute and a half to 2 minutes. It's just it doesn't matter who you are. It's not possible.
Yeah.
So that range is hard because it's like,
is it a sprint? Is it a
Yeah, you can't pace yourself too much because somebody might attack and pass you, but you can't go all out or you're not going to make it to the finish line. So I always tell people, it's like, you're riding your motorcycle and you're just pinging off the rev limiter and you're like, God, is this thing going to blow or is it not?
Yeah.
But yeah, it was super hard for one, but it was also just the UCI has a way of not always
ruining shit.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah, ruining shit. And it just wasn't going in the direction that I thought was cool. And yeah, so I just kind of quit it.
Yeah, right. So mountain biking in that early 2000s, kind of like late 90s. For me, I look back on that era pretty nostalgically, obviously, but that was such a dope era in the sport. And I think Tani was saying yesterday that she thinks that's the era where dudes made the most money. Like Palmer was on like $1 million, but I'm like, I don't know. What was that?
Dude,
so
that's
what
so
was that era
It's
like?
like so funny that you are bringing this up because I'm trying to think. I was just talking to somebody on the phone about money and about somebody's how much they were making or something like that. Which we should talk about that because that's always like a mystery. Everybody, what's he making? Like, I don't know why that's such a big deal. Like, everybody wants to keep it a secret. And I think in all these other sports, like, look at Otani. I mean, he just signed a $700 million deal.
Bro.
Like, don't you want to know that? Like, okay, you're not as good as him, but maybe you're half as good. You can make 350.
Yeah.
I mean,
Dude, I thought about that when the Joe Rogan thing went down. I was like, okay, so $200 million. If I could be 10% as big as him, then that's $20 million. I'm like, oh, this is sweet. I could be 90% smaller than Joe Rogan.
Right? I'll take it.
Yeah.
That's what I used to always say that about our sport compared to golf. You're like, fuck, I wish I was like 100th best in the world in golf. Like, I'd be rolling right now.
Yeah.
But yeah, whoever I was talking to, I can't remember, and they were talking about salaries, and I was like, oh man, in my day, I never made no $500,000 a year in with everything, never. And then my wife, she I guess overheard this. I didn't know at the time, and then literally yesterday or the day before, she sent me this. I don't know, like Google screenshot or something.
Of like Brian Lopes' net worth.
No, it was, I think the most I ever made in a year was about $350,000.
Yeah. And
she said, look, you made $350,000 and whatever it was. I can't remember the year,
Yeah.
2003. That in today's money is worth like $650,000.
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, wow, that's pretty fucking cool. All right, so maybe I was kind of on par, with some of the top dogs. I mean, I think they're even making more than that, like Brunies and stuff of today. But yeah, so
if you had to hazard a guess, what are the top dudes making in downhill right now?
I would think somewhere between that 500 to $1 million.
Yeah.
All in, obviously. With
like
bonuses.
Once you win bonuses and that sort of stuff. Do you know what a manufacturer bonus is worth at like a big company, like a Specialized or a Santa Cruz? Like if you win the World Champs or a World Cup overall, or like a World Cup Championship overall.
Yeah, I think, because I trained this kid that I was telling you about, and I help them with all their sponsorship stuff as well. I've become a bit of an agent as well, I guess, on the side. But so I know what like his bonuses are. And now, granted, he's first year elite, so he's not making anywhere close to, I'm sure, like a salary of a Bruni or somebody like that. But he has pretty big bonuses, and has the potential to triple or quadruple his
sign on.
his income if he does that. So I don't know. I feel like in my day, a world championship, I think a bonus was like 25 grand or something for a world championship. I think nowadays it's, probably anywhere between 50 and 100.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. Cause I was just talking to Wygan about this the other day, right? Like I kind of would push on him. We'd have like this back and forth of like, I would say guys should make more money. And then there's like this ethical conversation around, well, should the public know how much money they make? And then on the athlete side, they're like, fuck you. Like, shouldn't know like how much money my contract's worth. Like it's personal. But then the way that I would look at it, I'm like, okay, is it a net positive for the sport if the fans know how, like, does it make the racing better? And I would say yes. Like, I would say to be a fan of the either downhill or motocross or whatever it is, you have something more invested, or you have, I guess, like a better context and understanding of like what's on the line for the athlete. And then I think that gives you a bit more, like there's a bit more emotion involved when you're watching like the highs and the lows. Like you understand the highs more, you have more context, and then you can understand the low. Like, dude, Tomac's Achilles probably cost him $2 million.
Yeah, and even to a step further is like with these guys, I don't know exactly what it comes out to, but like with Otani, let's just use as an example. I mean, he's making whatever, hundreds of thousands of dollars per game. So if he misses a game or, a month because of his arm or whatever, you're like, holy shit, he just lost.
Dude, yeah, think about that. I wonder, so $700 million contract, but I wonder if it's like, if it's broken into per game, and if you miss a game, like you don't make from what, 3 million. Like, dude, the pressure and the stress that you would feel. But I guess at that point, like even if you only play half your contract, like you're still,
right.
It's not a big deal. But yeah, like that extra layer, like there is a layer of complexity. And then think about, this is me just thinking out loud, but think about the layer of complexity it adds to his life in terms of pressure to performance. And it's like, for him to be justified in making that money, he's got to be so on point. So think about the level at which that you'd step up as an athlete to be like, that's how much is invested in me. Like the need to perform, the hunger to perform, like, and it could go both ways. Like that could break a person, or it could force a person to become superhuman in a way, So I think I personally, after doing quite a bit of thinking about it, I think that it is better for fans to know. But I also think it gives the athletes a bit more leverage as well. Like I know that there was a rally team, so I won't go too far into it. I know that there was a rally team where all of the riders got together and asked how much money they were making. And then they all basically said, all right, this is a bit fucked. I think let's all just go and ask for the same amount of money. They wanted to pay like an A rider, a B rider, and a C rider. They've all won the Dakar before. Like they've all won. They're all the fucking legends.
Right.
And they were like, nah, this is the price.
Right.
So it's like there is power, there's leverage. Like,
Totally.
even for agents to say what people are worth. Like, I mean, I'm sure that number got floated through the industry and people were kind of, really gauging what it's worth. And that's where things become like a genuine marketplace.
Right, because I think right now they're just rumors.
Yeah.
And people are like, oh, this guy makes this. Oh, I heard this guy makes this, or but they don't really know. And sometimes those numbers are totally off, right? Like, oh, so and so makes this much money, and you're like, I know he actually only makes like half of that,
Yeah.
So I mean, it goes both ways, but yeah, I think just having the knowledge and to just up everybody's pay and salary. But I mean, there are obviously guys that like are worth more. I don't know the case that you just told me about all the rally guys. I mean, they might have all won a rally, right? Or Dakar. All right. So they're all like, okay, we've all accomplished the same shit, but maybe this guy is like a super guy, you know,
Yeah,
like he's whatever. He's the
He's like the
he's like the
star.
Hayden Deegan, right?
Yeah,
Like
yeah.
everybody knows him, everybody loves him. He's like the up and comer. He's like got tons of fans, you know. Whereas like the other guy is just kind of quiet, conservative to himself, you
Yeah,
know, maybe
yeah.
a bit more like Tomac-ish, right? Just keeps to himself, and he's just, so I mean, there's a worth to that too, right?
Yeah.
So
Man, do you ever think about how, like, what Hayden's future is going to be like when it comes to that stuff? Like, how hard would it be? Oh, because you're on a team, right? And you're like Star Yamaha, but you're Hayden Deegan. It's like he's already one of the biggest stars in the sport. So there's a very different, like he'd be doing his own deals. There's like, that would be such a complex situation for so many people to navigate, I'm sure, because there's just one of him, and it's not happening again ever. The
Right.
way that Hayden Deegan happened, like between the dad, the YouTube channel, how good he is, like that's I guess a great problem for a company like Yamaha and Monster to have, but like, wow, that's got to create some issues.
yeah, I mean, it's definitely a different world than the world I grew up in. You know, shit, we didn't even have cell phones when I was raised. So yeah, some of these kids, man, they got a lot going on, but I'm sure he's got some good people behind him.
Oh yeah, definitely. They've got like a whole machine behind, you know, the development and like to make sure that they go through. But even like the sister, and it's just great when you really look at that family. Like that is pretty insane.
Yeah, it is insane. I don't know that I would personally want to live like that or have
Yeah.
like that much kind of going on and just like all the time, 24/7. It seems a little bit much, but hey, to each their own. I mean, whatever they want to do, right? It's their life.
Yeah. Well, and I think when you grow up in it, you just like Hayden wouldn't know any
Right.
other way.
Right.
Like, you know, it's not like he would know what it would be like not to have it, which is wild to think about.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
so that you're in that kind of period and making, you know, most you ever made, say 350, like, so that is pretty good living back then to be young dude traveling the world riding a mountain bike. And
Yeah.
I remember anyone that watched Mud Cows back in the day, it looked like it was a really, really fun time.
Yeah. No, it was fun. There was a lot of good times. I mean, I wasn't like the big partier like Kavorik or Ranny
Yeah.
or Steve Pete or Warner or any of those guys. Like I wasn't, or Palmer. I wasn't. I was more focused on just racing and winning, and that was kind of like I would always laugh. I'm like, oh yeah, that's awesome. Those guys are out there partying. Like, yeah, let them get drunk. You know, I want to win tomorrow.
Yeah, keep drinking, boys.
Yeah,
Bottoms
keep
up.
drinking. You want some more beer tickets? Here you go. But yeah, there was definitely some wild parties for sure, and yeah, Glenn, your uncle, like with the Mad Cows, and man, I think it's funny when you think back, like, you know, when you're young, you don't. Well, at least I didn't. There was a lot of things like I just took for granted and didn't really think about, and now, you know, into my 50s, I could think about. I'm like, wow, those are pretty freaking cool times.
Oh,
and man,
yeah.
that was sick. And you know, you just little things you kind of wish you would have like appreciated a little bit more when you're younger. But you know, I guess that's why they always say, right? Like if you knew then what you knew now.
Yeah,
You know?
yeah. What were some of the best memories of that kind of era? Because it really seemed like mountain biking kind of was finding its identity in some ways. Like it was kind of getting out of the skin suit era, and the bikes were getting rad, and there was like the Troy Lee coming in the way that it did. It seemed like that era, at least for me, that shaped modern mountain biking culture. So it's cool that you were smack bam in the middle of that, and a big part of the culture, you know, like the Fox and the Oakley and the GT, you know, like it's such iconic imagery from back then.
Yeah, I know it. It definitely went through some periods of the sport where it was like, you know, I mean, when I first started racing mountain bikes, we didn't even have disc brakes,
Yeah.
right? Like suspension was kind of like just starting to happen. You know, just bikes just kept getting more travel, tires kept getting better. I mean, everything was just like every year it was just like
Better and better.
progress,
and better.
progress,
Yeah.
progress, progress, progress. And I was pretty fortunate to be in that period. I think, like just a lot of good memories. Like when I first got on mongoose, like I said, like they gave me this like hardtail mountain bike, and I didn't know anything about it, and I would just go mountain biking with people like Bryson Martin, for instance. Bryson Martin ran Marzocchi suspension.
Oh, yeah,
Marzocchi was like, the
Yeah,
shit back
the
then.
bombers.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And like I met Bryson when I was like, I don't know, like 90, 92, I think. And he saw something in me, and he gave me like my first Marzocchi suspension fork with like, it had little holes at the bottom before the quick release skewer at the bottom. That was like my first suspension fork I ever got. And, then, he went on to when Marzocchi eventually got sold, and then he started DVO suspension. And
Oh, is that who that? Ah.
Yeah.
Their stuff looks so sick.
Yeah. Yeah, you're going to get a chance to ride it.
Oh, you've got some of that on the Yamaha?
I just got, on both my Yamahas, and I actually got a brand new fork that I'm going to get dialed in just for you.
Oh, sick. Okay.
Yeah, brand new 38 DVO is going on your bike.
Sounds good.
So, there'll be no excuses. But yeah, just like that progression, like knowing Bryson from 92 and still working with him today. Troy Lee, same thing.
Yeah.
Like I met Troy Lee in 92 also. I did this race called the Downhill Mania at Big Bear, and I won, and some guys from his office were like, "Hey, we want you to come in and meet Troy Lee." And I was like, "Troy Lee? Okay, who is he? What does he do?" And they're like, "Oh, he paints helmets and stuff." I was like, "Okay," and I didn't know who the hell he was, right?
That's
like,
so
and I thought, it's funny because I'm great friends with
Yeah.
Troy now. Like we're really good friends. And I always tease him like, "Man, remember when I thought you were Asian? Like I thought I was going in to meet an Asian guy, and I go in and I meet this white guy." So yeah, just so I've known Troy and worked with him since then. Like, before he was really making helmets, he was just painting helmets and sticker kits and visors on helmets, and So yeah, there's a lot of cool errors that I've been. I mean, even not quite as early as Bryson and Troy, but the Fox family. Like I got sponsored by Fox in the kind of mid to late 90s. I think 96 maybe was 96 or 7 was my first year on Fox, and so I've known Pete, forever since then. And now I work with Pete with Renan. Like, he started that brand a couple years ago, and then he reached out to me because he just lives right around the corner here, and asked me to help him with the mountain bike gear. And so I've worked with Pete on developing all the new mountain bike gear, and now like kind of different position and time in my life where now I'm looking for the riders instead of being the rider. Like I'm looking for the next young kids and up and coming talent to get in the Renan gear. And so yeah, it's it's fun to kind of go through all these different layers and stages of the sport and just the history of it.
Yeah. What was it like to be a Fox rider back then? That was like just not. I mean, I don't know that Fox has ever really had a peak, but I mean, I'm sure back then it was just such a cool, wild time in like that company's history, and just like all of, you look at motocross in the 90s with like what Jeremy was doing on Fox, and then they were everywhere, like wakeboarding, and they were just that time period for Fox was crazy.
Oh, it was really crazy, and it was cool. Like I used to deal with Todd Hicks. I don't know if you ever know Todd, but I used to deal with him, and he and I he's 1 year older than me, but we have the same birthday. And so I think we had like a special bond there. And like I would just get these boxes that would just show up, with like one of everything of the new whatever summer line or spring line, and it was just I never ordered anything. It would just show up. It was like Christmas all the time, being sponsored by them. So that was pretty cool. And like you said, the wakeboarding and the surfing, all the different. Todd and I we used to do a trip to Florida every year around the Daytona Supercross.
Oh, yeah.
And we'd go to like Sean Murray's house, who was a pro wakeboarder that was sponsored by Fox. We'd go hang out with Murray. Yeah. And then we'd go over to the Stewart's house. We'd go to their compound. When Malcolm was just little, right? He was like on an 85, and I'd just grab a 125 out of the garage and ride laps with Malcolm, like when he was like little. And so yeah, it was pretty cool being sponsored by Fox. Just a lot of cool people I got to meet, and a lot of crossover there.
How different does the industry feel now? Because I guess it's not like that these days, and everything's so much bigger in a sense, but yeah, just that feel, like the real small, it was like mum and pop shop versus big company, like you kind of had it in the era where it was still like a family business, and it's just like as you go on through the years and companies get bought and sold and they get so big, that feeling changes. But it seems like with so many of the relationships that you had, it was still in that like mum and pop shop kind of deal.
Yeah. No, you're right. And I think, that's one thing that I kind of talk about with the younger generation and the kids that I like to try to help mold their lives. But, nowadays it's like if you're sponsored by Fox, like you probably have no idea who the owner is.
Yeah.
In my day it was like, sweet, I know Greg, I know Pete, I know Scrap, like, the three brothers of the family, like I know them. Same with Bryson now at DVO or Troy at his company. Ibis guys, like I know all the owners of that company. A lot of owners of Pete now at Renan. I like to build those relationships and try to make them as long lasting as possible. It's great when you're at the height of your career and you're winning everything. I mean, if you're sponsored by whatever brand and you have this contract, that's awesome. But then, because this happened to me a lot at GT, then the marketing person leaves.
Yep.
And you're like, oh, okay, so who do I deal with now? And you're like, oh, there's a new park. And this new marketing person comes in and he's like, so what, why should we continue our contract with you? What are you bringing to the table? Who are you? You're like, fuck,
bro, I've been here longer than you.
Yeah, exactly. And that's exactly how I always felt. I'm like, especially back then, because I was winning so much. I was like, really? You're the marketing guy. Shouldn't you know who I am? Like, why do I got to sell myself again to you? Like,
yeah.
But eventually, it can get hard if you don't. If companies are always turning over people and you don't have like a real like solid relationship and foundation with the brand. So,
no, dude, I fully get that. I mean, that's why I'm so. I don't even have a deal with Alpine Stars, but it's like I know Gabrielle, and I know the top guys in that company.
Yep.
We're all really good friends, and we've got like organic relationships. Like we all ended up being friends from different places, and it's like it's one of the reasons why I roll with those guys. Like they feel like family, and yeah, you definitely get a sense. I mean, Troy would be another one where it's like that, because you just like know the owner. But yeah, there's just like musical chairs sometimes with companies, and it's like you really want to. There's a quote from this podcast. This guy Naval Ravikant, he's like an Indian immigrant. He ended up being like a tech multi like 100 millionaire, and he's like a modern day philosopher these days. But some of his business stuff is like amazing, and he says it the best, like what you said, but he says long-term games with long-term people, and it's like that's what you've done through your career is you've played these long games with really good long-term people, and that's how you can end up I think that's part of, you know, the longevity that you have in the industry. It's like,
Yeah.
it's all relationships, man.
It
like
is.
being sponsored, and even like I'll have people that will come to me for advice on stuff of like, oh, I want to approach this company. And I had one guy where I had a chat with him and I was like, right, what you need to do is you need to go and you need to say what you're providing for the year. And then you need to then give that a value. Like what you're providing, it's $45,000 worth of value.
Right.
And that you have to itemize it. Like,
Yeah.
and it's be specific. What post you're going to do. And then he was just like, oh, fuck. Like, I just need a gear sponsor, man. And I'm like, well, that's why you won't get one. Like, you need to show people your value, and like you add value to them. They add value to you. It's like win-win. Every deal that you make has to be a win-win. Like the days of one-sided deals because you're good at riding are fucking done. You know,
Dude, I mean, you're spot on. And I mean, obviously, a lot of kids these days they don't understand that business side of things and why they're being even sponsored. I mean, I give you a funny story example. Was just literally this morning.
Oh.
I have a 10-year-old. He's in 5th grade, and I was dropping him off at school, and on the Navi in the car, it said, you know, directions to here. It said podcast, Gypsy Tales, right? And he's like, oh, you're going to do a podcast today, Dad? And I said, yeah. And he goes, oh, cool. So do you get paid to do that? and I go, no. And he goes, oh, well, so why do you do it?
Good question.
Right? Like,
Yeah.
you know, and I said, so, and that's what I explained to him. I said, look, Mav, I have, you know, these sponsors that pay me money. And, you know, at some point during the podcast, we'll probably talk about some of them. I go, and it's just awareness. I'm bringing them up. I'm trying to keep those companies' business going and to promote them, because if those companies are not staying alive, I'm not staying alive, right?
And you're going hungry,
yeah,
son.
and so it was, you know, it's kind of funny, but a lot of kids, and you know, I would say, for me personally, like when I was younger, I was actually interested in the business side of these things.
Okay.
Like one of my kind of mentors in the whole bike industry, I think I've always said I think he's the smartest guy in the bike industry. His name is Bob Marjavickas. And when I was at Mongoose, he was the president of Mongoose. Then he went to Specialized. He's been at Specialized ever since. So
wow.
probably you know, probably at least 25 years.
Okay,
not
so
more.
he is the smartest man in mountain biking.
Yeah,
That's probably the like one of the gnarliest companies.
Yeah, and he, you know, at one point he owned a piece of Specialized. I mean, there's a lot of history there, but I used to always like just ask him for information, and I'd go to his house. I mean, he's quite a bit older than me, you know, and I'd stay with him and his wife at the time, and I just listen to the guy because he knows everything about everything in the bike industry. And I'd always be like, oh, okay, like I want you to take me to Taiwan. I want to learn. Like I want to learn the back end of how this all works. And yeah, he's just been a great resource. But I think at least it seems like the majority of kids these days maybe don't get that part of it, you know?
Yeah. I mean, it's good and it's bad, because it's good if you're a person that gets it, you know? So like if you're a kid, I mean, in my case, like I'm like my wife always says I'm a professional dirt bike rider because she's like, you get paid to ride bikes. You know, I get paid to do this, and it's like it's a whole thing, you know? And I always think like, dude, if an idiot like me can make a living in the bike industry, you know, whether it's two wheels, 4 wheels, it's pedals, motor, like whatever, then anyone can, you know. But I think it's just purely get the understanding right. Like this last couple months, I mean, I love the business side of it as well. It's to me the most fun, and it's distracting from all of the bullshit about being like online essentially. But I've spent the last 2 months just doing all my proposals for all of our potential sponsors for next year, you know, and it's like, it's cost me thousands of dollars. Like I have a graphic designer that I pay thousands of dollars to work with me on just getting every pitch in line, and okay, I'm going to provide this video. It's going to go live on this date. That's what it takes these days. Like I have to work my fucking ass off for the money that I make.
It's a lot of work. People just say, oh, like, you know, you got to do this, you get to do this podcast, you know, but they don't see all the back work, right? And there's a lot of it. I mean, for me, when I started doing all my own sponsors, when I went from Volvo Cannondale, which at the time was like the biggest, you know, gnarliest team on the race circuit, like signed a deal with them. And basically at the time I had Oakley as a personal sponsor, and I think Alpine Star actually. When you said Gabrielle, I forgot about him. Like I've known Gabrielle forever as well, and great guy.
Genius.
Like
mad genius guy.
Yeah. It was awesome. I stayed at his place in Italy.
Sick.
And like back in the day, it was great. But shit, where was I going with that?
You signed with the company, and you.
So then so that was great. Like one big paycheck, you know, and don't have to worry about anything. And then when I left that team and went and started GT with, you know, Fox and Bell and, you know, all these other sponsors on my own, like I did that, right? Like I was the one calling out everybody. And I always told people, I'm like, hey, it's a lot more work to do it how I'm doing it than to just sign a deal with one big company. But when you know, that big company decides they don't want you anymore, like now you're back to ground zero. Like if one of my sponsors doesn't want me anymore or decides, you know, to close the doors, like maybe just 10% or 15% or whatever is gone away. So,
but it's also fun too. I mean, I look at this is like my big project. You know, I'm working on this at all times essentially,
right?
But it provides. Like it's like meaningful,
right?
You know, and it's like it would be the same with you. Like you care about what you do, you love what you do, your results are linked to your effort, and then life becomes simple. You know, like put in effort, get the results. Put in effort, get the results, and it's like a weird life hack in a sense. And I'm just always busy. I'm always got something to do. My problems are problems I've picked. Right. You know, like any of the things that suck right now in the business, like that's sweet. It's my business. Like I chose to do all of these things. So there's like a weird level of fulfillment if you want that. And I'm sure that it was the same for you. Like it's fun to make the phone calls. It's fun to pitch to companies. It's fun to work with them. It's way more work, but it just feels more rewarding.
Well, especially if it goes good, right? Like, you know, you're pitching, you know, whatever, Gabrielle, hey, Gabrielle, you know, this, and then you make it happen. You're like,
sweet.
Yeah. I'm glad I'm glad I could give you maybe even more than I thought, like, was going to happen out of it. And I mean, that was, you know, I always feel like in the business world, and now, you know, since I have a kid and you know, he's into other sports, he's not into bicycles. You know, I hang around a lot of different families in Laguna, and there's a lot of affluent people just around here. And so I love just like listening how their business works or, you know, how things work in their world. And I swear almost always I can relate it to my world. Yeah. It's just different, right? Like, you know, like you said, you work hard and you get rewarded. Or, you know, I just like you're doing, like I was doing the same thing. I'm like, fucking, you know, sponsor me. I'm going to fucking win. Like, I'm going to win this championship. Like, you know, this. And then I go out and fucking do it. And then you're like, damn, you know, I win, you win. Let's go. You know, like I'm here to like do what I said I'm going to do. So,
no, I love it. So did you ever get into any other business like outside of mountain biking, or was there any, like maybe you made a bit of money and then you started doing some other investment stuff? Like did any of that ever appeal to you as well?
Yeah. I mean, when I was 12, 13, somewhere around there, I started doing some commercials.
Yeah.
And so before I started making money on bikes, I used to do some commercials, and that's like how I bought my first car and all these things. Like, I would tell people, I'm like, oh yeah, came home from school today, and had an $800 check in the mail from, this, juicy fruit commercial I did, or whatever, right? Like
Yeah.
it was pretty cool. But so I kind of started really saving when I was pretty young.
No way. That's sick.
Yeah, and got like a money guy when I was young, and started a retirement account when I was 16, 17 years
No
old.
shit.
So I had that kind of going for me, but I've always been, like, in my head at least, try to be entrepreneurial, but I don't know. I'm also a bit of a procrastinator, and like sometimes I have a problem of like actually pulling the trigger and actually doing stuff. Like, but as far as like businesses, like for a while I was into just like moving around here. Real estate goes up, and I'm like, oh, babe, let's just move. Like, we
Yeah.
can make 200 grand on our house right now. Let's just move, and we'll go buy a house like over there, or something smaller or whatever. Just kind of, and the tax laws here in the U.S., you can, if you live in your house for 2 years or more,
You
and
don't have to pay the capital
yeah,
gains.
you don't have to pay the
Yeah.
capital gains up to a certain amount. So I was kind of just doing that for a while, but then with, once you have a kid, and my wife really loves our neighborhood, and
Yeah,
I'm
yeah.
like, shit, we could make a lot of money in this place. We don't have to move out of Laguna. We can just move to a different spot, a smaller house, a crappier house, fix it up, but it's not working so much in that realm. But yeah, as far as other little, I'm partners in a few things. I'm partners in. We're still developing it, but it's a trail finding app. It's
Sweet.
called Trail Aware.
Yeah.
And it's there's obviously a ton of different trail apps out there, and a lot of them are really good. But where we're trying to separate ourselves is my friend is a developer, and he's figured out a way to draw augmented reality. It's all through augmented reality, so he can draw a line.
And you can be holding your phone up on the track.
Yeah.
Oh, that's
So
sick.
it's all done through the phone and AR, but it's basically he can draw a 3D line over a trail in AR. So it's a GPS line. You're like holding your phone up. You're like, oh, yep, there's the trail, and you're looking at the mountain, and you're like, yeah, there's a trail right there. Or it's great, like if you're in an area where you're looking at your map and it's a flat map, right? And you're trying to go like, fuck, is the trail over there or is it over there? You don't know.
Yeah.
Maybe it's bushy or a lot of trees, and you're like, you can just hold up and go like, oh yeah, the trail's right over there. It says it's 100 feet over that way.
That's sick.
Right. So, yeah, it's pretty cool. We're still trying to get that going, and there's definitely some development that still needs to be done, but you can download it. It's called Trail Aware. You can check it out, and yeah. So hopefully that's gonna just get better and better. But yeah, what else am I involved with? Just little stuff. I've had a book for
really?
I don't know. It's probably been over 15 years. It's called Mastering Mountain Bike Skills.
No way. That's awesome.
Yeah, it's in its 3rd edition now, but it's in like 7 or 8 different languages.
Wow. What was the process of making that come to life?
Basically just the need for an instructional book. Like at the time, 15, 20 years ago, when the first edition came out, there was really, I think Ned Overend had an instructional book, and it was pretty dated at that time. So so we did a book, and it was we got a publisher to actually publish it. My friend wrote it. Basically, we went on a road trip, and for a couple weeks, and he was just like taking notes, like how I'll be driving, I'll be like, yeah, so the bunny hop, this is what you do, or the wheelie, this is what you do. These, and he's a really good writer, so he would just kind of put everything into words, and then so that was the first edition, and then after like 5 years, the publisher was like, hey, it'd be cool to do an updated version with new content, and with the sport like always changing and progressing,
and bikes getting better, new disciplines.
Yeah, it was pretty easy. So so it just kind of grew and grew, and I mean, it's not like a huge money maker, but it's something,
like something cool.
Yeah,
cool to do as well.
The coolest thing about it for me is just people will be like, dude, I love your book. It's helped me so much, you know? And so that's kind of the coolest part, I think.
And so how did you just go about finding a publisher?
Man, I think my partner at the time, he might have found the publisher because, like I said, he's a really good writer. That's what his job is writing. I think he found the publisher. I don't remember exactly how he found it, but this company is mainly focused on like informational kind of stuff, you know, whether it's nutrition or triathlons or
so
whatever.
They've got like their lane that they're in.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, so
that's still cool. Like, that's a cool process to go through. And like, there's something cool about writing a book because there's a massive barrier to entry.
Yeah.
Like it's really, really time consuming.
Yeah.
And it's really hard to do. So I think that's like, I don't know. I love reading a lot too, but I just think there's something magical about a book. Like to do a podcast is pretty easy. Like I don't edit anything. It's fucking word vomit for 3 hours, you know? And then, so it's like, okay, yeah, you put a lot of content out there, but it's like, it feels different than a book. Like that's something that's very real. It takes a very long time to do. And there's such like a process to actually make it happen. And then for people to buy it because it's good is like a whole nother thing. So yeah, I think it's such a sick process to go through.
Yeah. Well, I didn't do the actual writing, right? Like I was doing the vomiting, like you. But no, it's cool. So it's just kind of like a little something to give back, I guess. It's kind of nice.
Yeah. And so when you retired, and then you retired from the sprint stuff, what did the next couple of years look like?
Mainly just, you know, riding enduro was kind of my thing. But that's, you know, probably, well, I've been with Yamaha now for a bit over 4 years. End of this year will be like, we kind of signed initially at a not like at the end of the year or at the beginning of the year. It was kind of partway through the year. So yeah, it'll be a little over 4 years. So that was kind of like the next thing, right? Was jumping into the e-bike world. Yeah.
Yeah. And then, so when did the training of the Troy Lee team happen?
God, when was that? Man, it was when, you know, Cole was on the team, Christian Craig, Shane McElrath, Jesse Nelson.
Was Will on the team then?
No.
Okay.
No. So it was after Will raced.
Yeah.
But, when those guys were all babies.
Yeah, and how did that come about? Obviously through the friendship with Troy.
Yeah.
But what did you feel like you could add in that training, or did you like, where was training even at kind of in that era? Because it's so different now, like from when that time to now, like the whole training and the facility, like it's such a different deal. So what was the training sphere like then?
Yeah. It's basically, I mean, how it came about was Troy and Tyler Keefe, they basically hit me up one day. I think maybe Troy was even in Europe or somewhere else, and he called me, and they were like, "Hey, you want to train our guys? Like, we need somebody to get them in shape." And I've always kind of prided myself on being in really good shape, and always just really trained myself. You know, I was into weightlifting and stuff a lot, like in high school and after high school, and into BMX, and I just always trained myself and always prided myself on being in good shape. And I think so maybe that's why Troy hit me up and was like, "Hey, you want to do this?" And I was like, at the beginning, honestly, I was like, I don't know if I want to do this. Like, I don't know. Well, I don't know if I'm qualified to do this. You know, like, or if I want the work and the responsibility. And really what it came down to is I just reached out to a handful of friends and people that I trust and asked them, really. I'm like, "Do you think I should do this? Like, do you think I'm qualified to do this?" And,
that's a good way to do it.
You know, and like, and all of them were like, "I think you should, Brian. Like, I think you should do it. I think you don't, I think you take for granted what you know and what you've done and stuff." And I think you could help and add something to these kids' programs. So I was like, all right, well, yeah, let's give it a go, And so I agreed to it with Tyler and Troy. And I remember the first time I met, Jesse and the rest of the writers. I I remember sitting down with them and I was like, all right, like, I'm not claiming I know everything there is to know about training because I don't. You might ask me shit and I might not know the answer to it. But let's see how it goes and, just kind of roll with it. And what I kind of quickly learned was that these guys didn't really know that much. And so, even though I didn't feel like I was like the guru of training and, I had this huge, knowledge base on everything there that maybe I thought there was to know, is that I knew a lot more than they knew. So it was, I think it kind of, for me, it's hard because I think, my whole life was racing. It was all about like trying to be the best, trying to win. And I got to that point, right? So in my head, I feel like if you want to talk about bikes or racing, bicycles, like, hey, I know I was at the highest level and I made it here. But if you want to talk about anything else, like I might know some stuff, but I was never here. And I feel like usually when I try to do something, like I want to be like the best at it or try to be as best as I can at it. And, so like, I'm not going to sit here and try to debate like, how to build a motor. Like I don't know shit about building a motor or, something like that. Like, I don't know. Like, I mean, we could talk about suspension. I know how suspension works, but, if you start bringing in like, the forces of the engine, like I'm out, right? Like, I'm not going to debate it with you. So yeah, anyways, that's kind of the gist of the training thing and how it started.
And then what was the experience like? Did you enjoy working with the guys? Like, did you see how were you training back then? Because like nowadays you just get a Garmin and you get your heart rate strap and then you stay in zone 2 for a certain amount of time and then you do intervals up to this zone. Like, it's pretty like scientific now what you need to do, and it's like based on what you are required for your sport, right?
Yeah.
So, but that wouldn't have been the case back when you were training.
No. I mean, I think it really depends on what you're training for too, right? Like my races were relatively short. So, how I'm going to train is obviously different than a cross country guy is going to train, or a guy racing, GPs versus a guy racing, Supercross. But I mean, I always just did what I thought was needed for me. And once I kind of found that recipe, I really stuck with it. Like I didn't sway from it too much. If it's working, I don't feel like I need to change too much shit up. But some of the biggest things I always found with some of the motocross kids was, I used to always tell them, like, just because it worked for Carmichael doesn't mean it's going to work for you. I'm great friends with Ernesto Fonseca, and I know Ernesto used to always tell me, like, he hated going to Ricky's house. Like, Ernie's so funny. He'd just be like, fuck, I hated going to that fucker's house, man. He would just make me ride, 3 tanks of gas, and I was just fucking dead. And then we'd have to do it again. And I hated it, right? And that didn't, maybe work for Ernie. It worked for Ricky, but
Ricky loved it.
Everybody's different, So I felt like with these kids, it took a little while to really learn them and kind of see what worked for them or what made them physically, mentally, like have an advantage or take the next step forward. Or, like I used to laugh at Christian, Christian Craig, because he was like naturally gifted,
amazing.
like
Yeah.
unbelievable. Whether it was in the gym or on the bicycle,
Oh, really?
or in
So
the
even
swimming
fitness
pool,
wise.
he was really good to a certain point, because I think he has so much natural ability, just genetically, whatever, right? Like he's like really high, but to get him to go past that was always a struggle for me. Yeah, like he kind of would, I feel like, break mentally a bit when it was like past his
Comfort zone.
comfort
kind of
zone.
thing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Whereas there was like other guys like that would just kind of maybe not be super great, but would just keep grinding, right? Like just put their head down and just keep going, and not crack.
Yeah.
I remember actually one time Tyler Keefe was like, "Hey, I want you to just fucking just make these guys suffer. Like just like make them suffer mentally, physically."
Yeah.
I was like, "Really?" And he's like, "Yeah." I was like, "Okay." So I was like, "Okay, boys, Wednesday we're gonna meet at at the bottom of the San Juan Trail, and we're gonna do a big ride."
That's it.
That's
all
it.
the info.
I'm like, I go, bring a lot of water and bring a lot of food. And they're like, okay. And, Quinn Cody?
Nah.
Quinn Cody, he works for KTM now, but he's done like Dakar and.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, he's an off-road guy. He's badass. Done, the Baja 1000 and all that stuff a bunch of times. But at the time, he wanted to come. He had heard that I was going to take these kids. I can't remember. I must have told him. And he's like, I want to come. And so he came with us. Long story short is we did this ride. I just took him on a death march. And
Death march.
Yeah. And I remember halfway through it, Christian was like, this is fucking stupid. Why are we doing this? I'm just like, keep going, buddy. There's no turning back now. We're like in the middle of nowhere. It's halfway through the ride, right? Like either direction you go, it's going to be a long ways back. So. But Jesse was great. Like Jesse he loved the outdoors. He's kind of a mountain man, like by nature, I think. And he loved, like, we got done with the ride, and, Christian was always the guy who's like back to his car, gone.
Yeah.
Like, just see you guys. I'm not even saying bye. Just, I'm done. Training's
Yeah.
over. I'm done.
Yeah.
Yeah. And me and Jesse were just like hanging out, waiting. Cause Quinn was like, where the fuck is Quinn? Like, there was no turns. He couldn't have got lost. And then eventually we like started going back up the hill. Like he ended up crashing and like tacoing his front wheel and having to walk. But, yeah, just, testing kids in different ways and just trying to figure out, what's best for them really, right, at the races.
Yeah.
But it was fun. I guess to answer your question in short, I enjoyed it. I loved going to the races. And I loved when they did good, right? Like I was stoked for them. That was the best feeling, to just be a part of like, somebody's success. It's cool.
Well, it's funny that whole mental side, like it's really just the conversation you're having in your head. That's it. Like everyone's body's hurting. Everyone, like, I mean, I'm sure there's like levels where people are feeling better than others, but it's like you do a certain length ride or you do something a certain level of difficulty, and at some point it's like everyone's fucked, everyone's tired, no one's pumped, no one wants to be there, but it's like, who is adding more suffering to their suffering by telling themselves about how much they're suffering, and it's just like, that's really what it comes down to. And it's like you do enough of those things to just be like, okay, it's like it's only makes it worse by like complaining and whinging and like the narrative in your head, and it's like, how many people you either figure that out and you can just release it and let it go, or you can't.
Yeah. No, you're right. And I mean, I even do like little fun things with my kids, as far as like sometimes I'll tell them exactly what we're going to do. And sometimes I'm like, I don't tell them anything, because I want to see if they can figure it out themselves, and and when they don't figure it out themselves afterwards, like, it's kind of like lesson learned, hopefully, right? I'm like, dude, why you didn't know how long we were going to go ride today? Why did you fucking go that hard that early in the ride up the hill? You fucking blew apart. Or even sometimes when I do tell them, hey, we're going to do whatever, 3 laps of this, right? And each lap is going to progressively get harder. And then at the end, somebody blows up. And I'm like, well, you blew up. What? You knew we were doing 3 laps. Why'd you go so fucking hard on lap 1?
Yeah.
Right? Like, dude, use your head. Like, did you think you could go that hard on lap 1 and still go that hard on lap 2 and 3? If you did, you got it wrong. And if you didn't think about it, well,
you should think about it.
Yeah, you should think about it.
Yeah.
So, I feel like there's, a lot of sports. I mean, especially when you get to the top level, like, most of it is mental. Like, I always feel like there's a handful of guys. Granted, some guys are just way more talented than the rest, but there's always like a handful of guys that could potentially win, right? It's just who can mentally put it all together.
Oh yeah. Did you feel like, or did you ever have a certain period in your life or a certain training or event or thing that you did where you fully like had to break that voice in your head in a way? Like you kind of broke through the suffering, or was it like you were a natural at that in a sense to where like you could kind of do it? Like my brother, for instance, he is just a little fucking freak, like pisses me off. Like you could tell him today to go and run a marathon and he would just run the marathon, and he wouldn't mentally in his head, like no matter how much he's hurting, no matter how, like he just won't say anything. You'll never hear him complain, and he'll just like do it. And it's pretty impressive, to be honest. Like he just has that gear. Right. And it's like, I don't know whether he had it naturally or whether like, he kind of worked into it, but he's kind of one of those guys where like you can't bury him. Like whether it's pride or whether it's like he wants to, whatever his reasoning is, but he's like one of those dudes. So it's like, did you learn that, or was it something that you like cultivated?
Oh, that's a good question. I'm not sure. I mean, I'm not going to sit here and claim that I couldn't be buried at something. I mean, there's definitely things, but I mean, is definitely driven. Me personally is definitely driven, and how the will to push as hard as I could, like until it was just there was nothing left. On the mental side of things, I think everybody's different, right? Like you got to find
what it is that makes you tick.
Yeah, and like I know. For me, like there were certain things like a lot of people, I don't know how many, but, people thought I was a dick back in the day racing because I would maybe blow people off or not like, like be aware of them, because I'm just like,
tunnel vision.
Yeah. Like somebody might, hey, Brian, and I might not even like acknowledge them at all or whatever. Right. And when I was racing, I was definitely like I used to have a guy, Steve Blick, who was the Oakley, like the Paggio or the Osho, back in the day for the bike world. And, they would be cleaning your glasses, goggles, getting, ready every time you get in the gate, and like, I mean, he was a good friend, but I just wouldn't talk to him, like, yeah. I'm like, it's like, you're sitting there, you're looking at the gate. I'm listening to like the start command. I'm watching the race in front of me, seeing who's doing good, what they're doing, and he's like, handing your glasses, and you're just like, you just look at him and you're just looking, and just stay, stay focused. It's like, it's, that's just how it was. Some people maybe thought I was a dick or arrogant or I don't know, whatever the case may be, but,
I think a lot of guys can relate to that though. Like Ben Spees was in here only a few weeks ago, and it's like he's one of America's greatest ever road racers, and he said the exact same thing, man, word for word. He's like, people thought I was an arrogant dick, but he's like, I had no room in my mind for anything but racing.
Yeah,
And it's like, that's cool.
Yeah.
Like, I respect it. You know,
Yeah.
like you can only respect that. Like
Yeah.
that's literally what you're there to do.
Yeah. And that's another thing. Like I always tell people, like it's different, right? Like you're kind of in a different, whatever. If you're like the top executive of, some big company, like you come in your office, you shut the door and fucking you go to work,
Yeah.
right? Like head down, you go to
Hell
work,
yeah.
you do what you got to do. You don't have to worry about people like walking in your office, right?
Yeah.
Like nobody's probably going to just walk in your office, but our office is like
Just
out
out in the
there.
field. Yeah.
You're out there. You're on, there's whatever. There's
That's a good way to put it,
people,
actually.
people not too far away from you, that might like, hey, can I get your autograph? Or hey, whatever, trying to talk to you, and you're like, dude, I'm not fucking talking right now. Like this is not my time that I want to talk. So you don't have that luxury, So,
No, it makes total sense.
Other people are, and hats off to them. They're completely different, Like Cedric Grussi is a perfect example. Like he just want to have fun.
Yeah.
Right? Like it was just all about like.
He's just a big Labrador.
Yeah, just big goofing off, having fun, talking shit, showing off for the crowd, whatever. Like that was Cedric.
Yeah.
And we were on the same team together. There was times where like the team manager wanted him to be serious, and there was like a couple races where he didn't want Cedric to race 4-cross because he wanted him to really focus on downhill. Because at that time I stopped racing downhill, and that was like the wrong thing to do mentally for Cedric, right? Because like he was like, no, fuck you. Like I love racing 4-cross. I want to race 4-cross. You're telling me I can't race? Then that would make him happy, right? And that wouldn't get the results that the team manager was hoping for.
So, and that's what I was about to say is like a guy like Cedric, like your coping mechanism with the pressure and the stress and like it was pointed attention, just pure focus. Whereas for a guy like him, if he did that, it probably stifled his performance. Like the nerves would get to him, the pressure would get to him. So like everyone's doing their best to cope. Yeah, and even when it looks like someone doesn't give a fuck, like that's them trying to cope,
Right.
And that's where I think it goes back to with you training. Like with the guys, you said you got to know what works for everybody.
Exactly.
To where it's like that is him goofing around and like what looks like not taking it serious is actually him taking it extremely serious. Like that's what he has to do to extract the results from himself. You were just on the opposite end of that spectrum.
Yeah. No, I agree. I mean, this back to this kid, Ryan Pinkerton, that I trained, the first 2 World Cups, he did okay. He got 5th at the first World Cup. And then the second one, he got caught in the rain, so he didn't get a good result. And then I told him, because I know how fast he is, and I ride with him all the time. I know what kind of shape he's in. And I'm like, Ryan, you just need to ride like you ride back at home, and these are the things you kind of learn when you're with somebody all the time, right? You learn, at least I think, I learned that what to say to them, what they need, right? That positive reinforcement, because some kids don't believe in themselves as much as other people believe in them. And this kid in particular, I'm like, I know he can win. Like, I know he can win. He just needs to make it happen, right? And so that's what I would always try to reinforce to him. Like, dude, you just ride like yourself. Ride like you do it. Don't think about this as another race. This is just another training run. Like all the prep you did, don't try to go faster than than you've done in qualifying or you've done in practice. Just, it'll all come together. And then, bam, he won one. And bam, he won another one. Then bam, he won another one.
No way.
And he just started fucking clicking them off.
That's insane.
And he won the overall World Cup. So
that was his junior.
Yeah, that was
World
this
Cup
year.
Fuck, that's so sick. And what do you think he was doing? Like what? Because there's a difference, and I'd always say this, there's a difference between believing you could do something and knowing you can do something. Like because one's hope and one's fact.
Right.
And it's very, very hard to believe in the fact until you've actually done it for a lot of people. And it's like once you did it that one time, I think Deegan was kind of like that this year, you know, like he had that crazy result.
Right.
And then once he did it one time, it was just like, okay, that's the new kind of benchmark. But
Right.
like, what do you think it was for him that led to those kind of results back to back?
I think it's just, you know, once you get one, right, then you get some self-confidence.
Yeah.
And then once the self-confidence, I mean, that goes a long way. Because like you said, one's hope and one's fact, right? Like
Yeah.
he's like, I hope, of course, everybody hopes they can win, right? Like,
Yeah.
I mean, maybe not everybody, but most people, right, at that high level, they're hoping they can win. But until they do it, you know, it's always like, is it going to happen?
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's just like you're just fine tuning the recipe, right?
Yeah,
You're fine tuning. You're like, I need to, you know, it's like you're making guacamole and you're like, hey, taste this, you know, and you're like, a little more salt, you know, you know, a little more pepper, right? And then you're finally like, oh yeah, that's it right there. Eventually you just find it and you're like, yep, that's it. I'm on it. I mean, and I think it's hard too, because once you get on those rolls, or once you start winning a lot of races, or you start winning championships, right? And I'm sure, you know, McGrath will attest to this, right? He's won more than anybody, but it's like, then if you don't win, people are like, what happened? You're like, fuck, I got second, you know,
like it's hard.
yeah,
it's really hard.
Yeah. Just because I've won a lot doesn't mean I can win every single one of them forever, right? Like at some point there's people that are hungry and, you know, are trying to knock you off. And so it is hard like that. Then that pressure eventually just is on yourself, like to keep it going, right? Because then people start expecting you to win all the time.
Well, it's funny. Yeah. Expectations is the thing that really gets in the way of a lot of it. Like for me, did World Vets, 0 expectations to win. Like it's just never going to happen ever.
Yeah.
So sweet. Like where's the pressure? Like without an expectation, you don't have the pressure. When I go to a jiu-jitsu tournament, I fully expect to win. And it's not even, I don't even want to win more than I don't want to lose.
Right.
So like actually losing sounds worse to me than winning. So, and essentially like you're going there to not lose. And that's when the mental side of stuff like really comes into play. It's almost like, yeah, you don't even, like the winning's like, who cares? Like I just don't want to lose in front of all these people. I don't want to get choked. I don't want to get beat.
Yeah, I mean, I could imagine in that sport, it's even gnarlier. You're getting beat up, but no, I fully agree with you, and you know, this might have also kind of added to maybe the perceived you know, notion that like I was cocky, or why people maybe didn't like me or my attitude at certain times. But honestly, I didn't, I loved winning. Like I wanted to win and I loved it, but I wasn't a guy who was like, you know, going crazy, you know, I mean, there might've been a couple times where that were super, super special, but, I wasn't like, you know, flaunting it and, you know, making big celebrations and going crazy. And so maybe, I don't know, maybe that added to
that
like
sent a bit of a message that wasn't the case kind of thing.
Yeah. But I really loved winning, but you know, I loved winning for me, not for everybody else. I mean, my team and stuff for sure, but you know, it's just what I wanted to do.
Yeah. And because do you think there is people that like almost win for other people and it feels they get more enjoyment out of like what other people get from it? Or because there is something to be said for, you know, like an athlete that would go up to the hill and just race a dude one-on-one. Like if you knew that like, all right, he's the other best dude in the world at this. We go with no cameras, no lights, no, like you'd want to go and do it for like just that. Whereas there's other people that everything's tied into it, like the fans, the podium, the champagne. Like there's two different styles of like enjoying winning, I guess. And I think that there's definitely like a way that they intersect. Yeah. But yeah, there'd be like a Casey Stoner. Like if you said to Casey Stoner, all right, just his ideal race would be like, I just want me and Valentino on the track, 20 minutes, winner take all, and no one there. Like he's that kind of guy. Like that would mean just as much to him to win that as it would to win like a GP.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. I think I'm probably more like the Casey Stoner, because again, not saying that I've never done it, but I just wasn't the guy who would go crazy and like, I mean, it's great to see fans cheering and that kind of stuff. That's great. But, I didn't like get too crazy and thrive so much off of that. Right. Like, I know my friend Bryson Martin from DVO, again, knowing him for so long, I can't remember who it was, if it was like Vital MTB or somebody did like an interview at Interbike, which used to be in Vegas every year. It was like the big trade show for bike.
Where's it now?
They don't even do it anymore.
Oh, okay.
Think.
Yeah, right.
But they went around like with this question: who's the most competitive, guy or and like it was like kind of hands down. People were like Ryan Lopes, and like I know you had RL on here, and like me and RL and Kurt Voorhees and a handful of guys. Man, we used to just like we called them Special Olympics, and I was always about like, all right, let's see who could jump up the most stairs. All right, let's see who could jump up on this wall. Let's see who could do this. Like it was just always a competition, right? Like I didn't really care let's play ping pong. Let's do this, right? Like it was just like it was fun, right? But I think competition's good, right? Like it just keeps elevating you and the people that are competing with you. I mean, if you have no competition, it's pretty boring.
Yeah. And it makes sense because you did it your whole life. Like to be racing BMX, like there's just something different about racing.
Yeah.
It's just like me versus you. And actually, like we've done it for thousands and thousands and thousands of years. Like there's something in it. And when you just do it as a kid, just over and over and over and over, like it's just got to ingrain in you like a certain type of mentality.
Yeah. I mean, it could be, it can be negative sometimes. Like even my wife will say like, dude, like chill out, right? Like it's your mom, go easy on her. And I get the go-karts with my mom and dad, and I'm like, get out of the way, Mom, you're fucking loud, you're fucking up my lap times. It's just like, I don't mean anything mean out of it. It's just you're just like in that, like ready to, just win, I guess.
Oh, dude, I mean,
and not everybody's like that, I mean, and I don't, I mean, there's certain things like, like if I'm going to go ride motocross with MC, I'm not going to like expect to beat him, right?
Yeah.
But like him being at the level he is, like he could have fun with me and fuck with me, right? Like, like, let me think like, I passed him, right? And then he can just pass me right back. And that's fun too, right? Yeah. Like when you have that kind of, I mean, it'd be like you and jiu-jitsu. I mean, I don't know shit about jiu-jitsu, but like, I love like competitive. I used to wrestle with my dad all the time when I was a little kid. Like we could roll around on the mat and like, I could try and you're so much better. You could be like, like, all right, I'm going to get your leg right here. All right. You just feel that? And I'm like, oh yeah, I feel it. And you could just fucking me, right? And just be like,
yeah.
And that's what, actually, speaking of that sport, like back in the day, do you know who Pistol Pete Lonkarovich is?
No.
Pistol Pete, Pete Lonkarovich, he was like one of the top BMX racers from, back. He's probably 5, 6, 7 years, probably 5 or 6 years older than me.
Yeah.
But he was like top pro, BMX racer, and then he raced mountain bikes too for a little bit. But God, back in the, I don't know, in the 80s, he started doing jiu-jitsu, and he's like, I don't even know how many time black belt jiu-jitsu guy, but I used to love like trying to mess with him, just because I knew like, I want to just see what he could do, just to see. But
oh, dude, he would be a monster if he started jiu-jitsu back then.
Yeah.
Like, did you ever see him getting into any shit on like the streets or like people actually fucking with him or anything?
No.
Oh, that would have been awesome. Man, I had a famous jiu-jitsu dude in here yesterday, and we had lunch, and we were talking about, like, if, you know, people, they try and fuck with you on the street or whatever, like, once you've done it for a certain period of time, and you reach a certain level, you're just like, hey, man, nah, we're not doing any of this shit. Like, because you just kind of know, like, and so, anyway, we're at, I did a camp in Thailand with this dude. He's one of the best in the world. Like, he was 77 kilos. And there's this thing called ADCC, which is like the Olympics of jiu-jitsu. It happens every 2 years. It's like no gi, so it's just like you can literally just wear no shirt. This is like the ultimate grappling event. So like Russian wrestlers do it, like judo dudes do it. You've got to qualify. There's trials all over the world. So anyway, this dude, Lockie, went in 77 kilos, and he submitted all of these 130 kilo dudes. So he's like a full ninja. And we're at this pool hall in Thailand doing this training camp. He was a coach there. And there's these kids leaned over the pool table. He's only a little dude. And the two tables are next to each other. And anytime he was behind him, they kept like whacking him with the pool cue and like just fully antagonizing him. And we were like getting riled up. Like, fuck these little assholes, you know? Like, let's smash him. And he was just didn't even bat an eyelid, eh? Yeah. And it's just like he's got to such a crazy high level to where he's just like, there would be no point in me destroying these three little assholes.
Right. No, I mean, that's awesome. I used to like to watch that back in the day when like the Gracies, there was like no weight limit. Yeah, no weight limit.
Not wearing gis and shit.
Yeah. I used to like to watch it because I was always intrigued by like, what the fuck just happened? Like, and you're like, you know, and then they do like a slow-mo and you're like, oh, that's rad. He had his ankle? I had no idea or whatever, you know? And so I used to like that. I'm not so much into the barbaric, just like smashing people, you know, like, you know, they get knocked out and then the guy's like jumping on him, pounding just on his face when he's like clearly laying on his back. I'm like, oh, that seems brutal.
It is pretty gnarly.
Do you really need to do that? Like, the guy just fell backwards straight to his back. Do you need to jump on him
and bash his brain?
Yeah, like, but I do like the submission stuff. Like, I wish I actually knew a little bit of that myself. You know, just if I always try to avoid that kind of stuff, but if it ever happened, just to be like you said, like, dude, just walk away, and then they don't, and you're like, and you're just like, dude, I'll break your arm right now. Just walk away, okay? Like,
I've literally said to dudes, like a guy, there was a dude giving a chick a hard time in like a nightclub once, and I like walked up, and I literally just won a state champ. Like, we were out with like our whole team after like a state title. And I just walked up and I was like, hey man, like, I don't know that she really wants to be touched like that. You know, like, I think maybe, and he got all in my face, and I'm like, hey bro, all of these guys just won the jiu-jitsu state titles.
Yeah.
I was like, I did, they did. Like, you should not do this, or you should settle down, because you'll just get choked while you're standing up, and then you'll get dropped on the floor in front of all these people, and that would be terrible for you. So let's just not do that. It just changes the way that you would like interface with certain things, and it's like when you're not scared of something, that it changes how you can kind of like interact in the moment. But yeah, I think it's one of those things too, where like the better you get, the less you do. I mean, I'm sure there's some guys out there that are kind of dicks about it. We actually had one dude, he was a bit of a dick. He was like on our team or whatever. He was in our gym, and he was asleep, naked. Some dudes tried to steal his car, and he's got up for like a drink of water in the middle of the night. It was like 3:00 in the morning. And he looked on like his security cameras, and there's a guy like trying to break into his car. So he's fucking stark naked. The dude's like 6'4", like massive, on steroids. And he chased this dude down the street, and his security cameras got all of it. And this guy gets maybe like 5 steps out of his driveway onto the road, and this dude just ankle taps him, chokes him out unconscious, and drags him back to his front doorstep, calls the cops, and just stands there naked. Cops rock up, and he's still got his dick out, and he's like on the news and shit like that. Like, oh, it was so fun. But he's one of those guys where he wanted to use his new powers.
Yeah, I wonder, are some of those like super top level guys, like when they fight and the kind of the attitude they have like a Connor. Is that really how he is in real life outside of like the cameras and the, you know?
I'd say it'd be, who were we talking about before about like the kind of ego? Oh, that, yeah, it's like there's a certain, like ego that you got to carry to like put yourself in that situation. Like you'd have to convince yourself you're a certain type of person. So I feel like a lot of those guys kind of do live in that mode, but it's pretty corrupting, I think, to be Conor McGregor all the time. Like you really would have to, like you would have had to have a switch from being the guy that didn't acknowledge your goggle dude to when it's all over, like being friends with him again, you know?
Right.
So it's like there'd have to be a balance, but I feel like some of those guys just kind of live like that, you know? Like then they just go on these 4-5 year runs of just being like these egomaniac fucking nightmares that just
like I saw him
train and bash the shit out of people. And
who was I remember watching a fight where he, like, the guy broke his leg.
yeah, that was Connor.
Yeah, Connor broke his leg, right?
Yeah.
I don't remember who he was fighting, but then he's like,
yeah,
he's like sitting on the cage, like, and he's still talking shit, and you're like,
he's like, your wife sent me DMs.
Yeah, you're like, what are you, like, really?
Get your leg fixed, bro.
Yeah, dude. But to the complete opposite, I used to always like to watch Manny Pacquiao.
Yeah,
Because I thought Manny Pacquiao was awesome. He was like such a nice guy, he seemed like, you know, and he was like respectful, and I mean, he's beating shit out of guys, but he was like, you know.
Yeah, like a martial artist.
Yeah, he wasn't like just crazy talking shit, and he was just like, yeah, let's fight. We're here to fight.
Yeah. Well, I think he ended up being like a governor or a senator in the
Yeah.
Philippines, and like he's super religious, and like I think he's given away a ton of different, like
Yeah.
a bunch of money and stuff. So I think he's just one of those, because there's definitely like a camp of people in that world where it's like a fighter or like a martial artist, and there's got, like, you'd have a Conor McGregor he'd do a camp for 6 to 8 weeks where he's a fighter, and then he might go in and out of the gym like a little bit until he gets his next fight, and then he goes back in the camp. And there's some guys, like I'd say a Manny Pacquiao kind of guy, where it's like it's just their life, like
Right.
it's who they are. They're in the gym every day, like they're living that lifestyle, and you'd say they're more of like a martial artist in a sense, you know.
Yeah.
But yeah, interesting dynamics, and it's such just a crazy sport to be able to do it.
Yeah. Doesn't seem like a fun way to make a living to me, but maybe.
Well, the dude in here yesterday, Nicky Roddy's like 25 and makes a bunch of good money. He doesn't have to get punched in the face. Like he's a professional like grappler. Like it's all he does.
Oh,
It's such a sick lane and a sick industry that you can actually make money doing that and not have to, like the Gracies back in the day, they had to fight. There was no like professional jiu-jitsu for them, you know.
Right. Now they have gyms all over the place.
Yeah, man, that family would have made so much money. There's like, I actually want to get the guy on the podcast, Keenan Cornelius. He's down in San Diego. He was like a prodigy. He was kind of like Adam Cincerello, basically, of jiu-jitsu. And then he now owns his own gym, and he's called it American Jiu-Jitsu. And he's like just fully going back through all the archives, and he's like trying to make American Jiu-Jitsu a thing. There's like articles from 1912 of American Jiu-Jitsu and all that sort of shit. So he's like fully trying to uncover this whole American history of it. So it's pretty sick.
So where are you at in jiu-jitsu? Like, do you, like when you're here, do you have a place that you go train? Do you you go train with somebody? Or are you just
There's a gym that I've been training at in Murrieta, because we were staying in Murrieta and Temecula, but we've literally just moved here.
Okay.
So I'm actually this like Thursday, probably tonight, tomorrow night, on the weekend. Like we'll try and move around to see if there's like a gym that we like, because my wife trains as well.
Okay.
So yeah, we'll try and.
And when you find a gym that you like, is that because of like the overall atmosphere, or like one trainer? Do you train with one trainer, or is it just like?
Well, you normally you should come to a class if you're ever like into doing it. But you basically on just an average class, you go in. There's like a 10-minute warm up where you'll do like a bunch of it's more like body movements that you kind of do a lot. You'll do a lot of like forward rolls, back like gymnastics kind of stuff, because you have to be very like aware proprioceptively of like where your body is how, like, because sometimes you've got like a second until you hit the mat, and you could be in like a really shitty kind of spot.
Right.
So you'll do like a 10-minute warm up. Then there'll be like one coach that will maybe do like 3 different techniques, and then you'll do some like positional rounds. So if you worked on, let's say there's like a guard, like a De La Riva, you'll like start in De La Riva. Maybe you just learn like 3 different De La Riva techniques. And so you'll start there with all those grips, and then you'll try and do something from what you learned. And then the last 25, 30 minutes is like actual just free rolling kind of practice. So it's kind of most of the classes, wherever you go in the world, they're kind of all structured the same. It's pretty sick. Like we went to Vegas on the weekend to watch a UFC grappling night, and we just walked into a gym Sunday morning, just looked on the internet, and it was like, all right, there's an open mat here at 11, and you just went in, like you don't know, like no one charges you, like when it's,
Oh, wow.
yeah, it's a sick community like that. Like no one's just like, yeah, come roll with us. Me and my wife had a couple rolls, and then I rolled with this purple belt dude. It was really good. We had like it's crazy when you think like, I went in, didn't know anyone. Me and this dude just bashed each other for 6 minutes, like hard as fuck. Didn't know it, didn't even say a word to each other before it. And then you just go like full send. And then at the end of it, we sat down for a couple minutes. And we're like, oh, that was really fun when you were here. And there, it's a very strange kind of dynamic, but you have like this, there's rules to it, obviously. And it's like, there's only certain things you can and you can't do. So you end up, I've got my things that I do. He's got his things. You come together, you have like a fight, and then you fucking mates. You know, no one's hurt. No one's like, it was hard, and you went 100% and try to bury each other. Yeah. And then at the end of it, you're just like, oh, that was sick.
So is there, I mean, most of the time, is there that respect? And how do you know who you're going to be grappling with? Like,
just pick someone.
Yeah, but even if he's like way better than you or way shittier than you, it doesn't matter?
Yeah. Yeah, and I mean, that's one of the kind of cool things about it. Like, you have to learn to be humble in 2 ways. So I can go into a gym, and there's guys that I definitely cannot beat. And then there's a whole subset of people that I definitely can beat. And there's nothing they could do to beat me. So you end up having to be super humble to be that guy that trains with a person that it's like they've just literally got no chance. Right. And then you've got to be humble when you get fucked up by some guy who you literally have no chance to beat. So yeah, it has like a way of filtering people out that like can't handle those 2 things. And then if you end up being a person that fucks up all the people that, you know, don't really have a chance against you, then there's always a bigger fish. Right. And people know that you're that guy. Like there's been guys where I've watched them roll with a girl, the roll before, and then I've just walked up. I'm like, "You mate, let's go," and just completely smash them because it's just like they just weren't respectful to the way that you should be respectful when you're like training with a girl. So I just fucking smashed the dude, made him rethink his entire existence. But yeah, it's a pretty gnarly little. Do they
ever so? Do they know what belt you are?
Yeah.
Oh, so you wear your color belt when you're in there?
Yeah. But it's sometimes in no-gi there's no belts. So that's where you're not wearing like the kimono and the thing. Yeah. So that you can't tell unless you've got like you can wear like your colored rashi for what your belt is. Okay. But yeah, if you don't, like, I might just wear like all black. But yeah, oh mate. And then they're not going to say anything to you. After, like, oh, mate, he just licks his wounds and kind of hangs his head because he already knows he can't beat me up. So, like, it's like a pretty good leveler for people that, you know, it really, really puts you in your place. You have to be respectful. Otherwise, you just get fucking smashed. But there is still a lot of tools that do it.
Huh. You ever get a guy that's just like, he's like, you're like, like in that guy's situation, if immediately he's like, oh, I'm going to get my ass kicked, he just, like, doesn't try, because I mean you're not gonna hurt him, right? Well,
the thing is like it's kind of gnarly, so you have to. No, like you don't want. I mean, it hurts, but it's not like gonna break him. But like, like get both. If I'm on top of him, you know, like get on like that mount position, and you can like get people's elbows, arms above their head, and you just squeeze their fucking your chest into their face. They can't breathe. It's like being waterboarded. Like there's so much gnarly shit you can do, but yeah, he's like there's definitely people what. They're just not cool. Like there's guys I've trained with at the gym where I fucking can't stand them and never want to roll with them, never want to train.
Right.
Even if they're not even that they're better, it's just they're just dicks.
Yeah.
You know, and you just don't. Some people you just don't gel with.
I mean, I almost feel like that's like going to like certain dirt jump spots, you know, like if you get these like local, you know, I think it's the same like in surfing, right? Like you get these locals that are like, you know, they like think they own the place, and they're not even like, they might be okay, but they're not that good, you know, but they think they're just like the boss of the fucking jumps. And some of them are, but you know, it's just like, really? Like, fuck, the guy just like barely cased the jump. Like, you don't gotta be a dick to him. Like, you know, like,
man, how many times like we had gnarly dirt jumps when I was a kid. That's like all we did, just ride BMX and do dirt jumps. And man, the education you get down at the dirt jumps when you're a kid, it's so, because there's always some like kind of methy dudes down there and some random 40-year-old that's still riding BMX and you're 10 and he's ripping on you. Like, it's a pretty weird ecosystem.
It is, man. I mean, when I think back to like when I was little and the dirt jumps I'd go to, I guess I was, I kind of look back and go, man, I guess I'm pretty fortunate I made it out. Like, you know, I mean, like you said, there's some sketchy people at some of those spots, but I mean, even Sheep Hills, like we're gonna go.
Yeah,
and
I'd love to go.
I mean, it's, you know, friggin' Sheep is world famous, been there forever.
Yeah.
Actually, we probably need to go sooner than late, like real soon, because it's gonna rain, and it's in a wetlands. So when it rains, it floods, and then I mean, it's with this rain coming, I think.
When's the rain coming?
I think they said Saturday.
Ooh.
The desert. Yeah. Going to the desert.
Hills.
Let's go ride some moto.
Yeah. What moto do you ride these days?
I have a Yamaha.
You got a Yami.
Well, I got two bikes. One of them's Yamaha. Lucky enough to get one a loaner bike from them. It's a YZ 250 FX.
Yeah, sweet.
So I don't ride the track anymore. I used to ride the track when I was young, but I never ever go to the track. I'm just desert guy, and I really enjoy just single track and kind of more like the hard enduro stuff.
Would you do a race if the right race came up?
Yeah.
I got a race for you.
Yeah. No, I've heard you talk about it.
Yeah, okay. You keen?
Maybe, but it's like, it's GP style is like track too, right?
Yeah, but it's going to be tamed down. So there's no big doubles.
Yeah.
So it's like, it's literally designed for you and me. Like, it's designed for normal people that have a job. So it's like, it's 500 minutes. So 8 hours and 20 minutes.
Yep.
And then, so you do a team of 2, 3 or 4.
Yep.
And then each team gets a transponder. And so you just got to ride the trans. It'll be like a 20-minute. So for a guy, like if you had 4 guys on your team, then you'd do 3 guys on your team. So you do 1 lap an hour.
Right.
So you do 20 minutes on, 40 minutes off. 20 minutes on, 40 minutes off. So every 40 minutes you're doing a 20-minute.
When is it?
March 9th. It's in Mesquite.
Yeah.
And it's like a really cool venue.
Yeah.
Get you out there.
Maybe.
Who would you do it with? Have you got a couple buddies that you ride? Dude, let's get Troy to do it.
Oh, Troy would love. I mean, he was out at
Day of the Dirt.
Yeah.
The World Vets.
The World Vets. Yeah. That was funny because I went out there, you know, because Troy got inducted, you know, that weekend.
Yeah.
And so I went out for that. And honestly, I didn't even know that it was the same weekend as World Vets. And so I pull up later in the day. I open my, you know, getting out of my truck. And the first thing I hear is McGrath and second, you know, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, what? I'm like, and then I hear, you know, Brownie, you know, and whatever, 8 seconds in front. I'm like, whoa, what
race is
where
this?
am I?
Yeah.
Like I thought I was just, you know,
Am I 1994?
Yeah, I thought I was just going to, I mean, obviously I was going to watch Troy get inducted, but I thought it was just like a local race or something going on, you know. And then so I watched the last lap of him and Brownie, But yeah, Troy would for sure do it. He loves
I think
that kind of
Max is
stuff.
going to do it.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I think Max so there's the 3 boys that they all live together, like Max and then Christian from Alpine Stars and then one of the other boys. So they're all, so I was like, boys, you guys could do it as well. It'll be pretty sick. Like it's just takes so much pressure off. Like you don't know who's winning.
Yeah.
Like it's just a fucking big free for all, and you just, at the end of the day, you're just like, oh sweet, we did this.
Yeah. Are you into like riding like technical trails and single track?
Yeah. I don't do it.
Have you ever ridden down in Baja?
No. I would like to do that. I've actually never been to Mexico.
Oh,
of all the years I lived here, I just didn't want to go across the border and do the visa passport. Like it was always just a bit too.
Right.
I was like, yeah, I could do it nowadays though.
It's sick.
The riding down there.
Yeah. I mean, I always go with people that know where they're going. Like, but I mean, I think it's unbelievable. You can ride everything down there. I mean, gnarly technical trails or, whooped out fast stuff. I'm not so much into like going super fast. I mean, I'm into going fast, but like on tighter, techie, more kind of trails. So, I'm not going, 50 miles an hour.
Yeah.
Right. Like fast on those trails. Like you're going 20.
Yeah. No, I'm kind of with you there. Like we got this big race in Australia called the Fink. And I was signed up to do it one year. I actually didn't end up making it. But it's like, dude, 2 hours of just fifth gear, wide open. Just sand whoop, like Baja spec kind of, but less rocky and just wide open,
Yeah.
So it's like, I just don't know if I got that in me, eh? Like I'm just not, I don't know that I'm that guy. Even on mountain bikes, like when I rode mountain bikes, I'd love the Rudy, rocky, technical like stuff more than just, I just didn't really have that gear. Yeah.
So I have that YZ250FX for like if I'm going to the desert or just, riding more like flowy kind of faster kind of stuff. I love that bike. I ride that. And then if I'm going to ride like more techie, hard enduro stuff, I have a 300 two-stroke.
Perfect. Yeah. That's what you need. Wait, I'm going to piss real quick.
Yeah, no worries.
2 hours 44 almost, man.
Oh shit. Really?
Yeah, we go deep.
Damn. Oh, no worries.
Almost made it.
Almost made it.
Yeah, the those like the enduro kind of moto bikes, like those in-betweeners between the full-blown trail and the motos, they're actually pretty sick, and it's like perfect for that kind of riding. Like they're just so much more forgiving than the track bikes, but they've still like got that motor there,
Yeah, and I think like they're not as gnarly, like so snappy and like, you know, a little bit more mellow. And it's kind of nice if you're not, you know, doing it all the time.
Is there many trails and like kind of hills and stuff to ride motos through Laguna, or is it only like you can't do it? Yeah.
No moto in Laguna. No. Yeah, they wouldn't like that. A lot of trails. I mean, tons of trails.
Yeah.
Yeah. If we're gonna go dirt jumping, we should do that in the next few days. But I mean, we can go ride, you know, a few days after the rain, and the dirt will be really good.
Yeah, it will be mint. Yeah. Yeah, dude, I don't even know, like, the last time I would have hit a jump on a mountain bike, Like, that'd be a big learning curve again.
Well, yeah, I mean, Sheep Hill's all, like, dirt jump style jumps.
Yeah.
But I mean, there's some mellow stuff there. There's some small stuff as well.
Yeah.
So, a lot of, the pure dirt jumpers, I think, don't like it as much because it's flat. Yeah. You know, nowadays, like, guys just, you know, roll down a hill and, like, just... Sheep, you actually got to pedal into shit because it's flat.
Yeah.
So
it's so iconic, that place. How long has it been around?
I mean, I would say at least 25 years.
Really?
Yeah.
I mean, it's as long as I can remember.
Probably more.
Yeah.
How old are you?
35.
35, yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I remember it from like all the magazines and video parts, and it was just like it's a cultural thing.
Damn, so you were young, like, wow. So did you go to the Worlds in Cairns?
I don't know. Like, I don't think I was at that. I rode the track a bunch, but for whatever reason, my family was just doing something. Like, because I was pretty young. I would have only been like 8 back then.
I was gonna say, yeah.
Yeah, but I ended up racing that track, and then I raced they used to have like Worlds and then the Nationals. So that downhill got like split into 2. And so that was like my local club day. Like, whenever we'd go there, and we used to go and push our bikes up the trails at that place. And they had the 4-cross track there, which like used to race all that as well. That was like like the bottom of the downhill. But yeah, no, I never actually got to that. And then when it went back there for the Worlds, I was living here, so I've missed it every single time.
Yeah, I mean, back in the day, Glenn was like, you know, making interesting obstacles on the tracks. You know? He had like the udder section. Did you ever remember that?
Yeah.
They call them like they were just like, he called them the udders, right?
Yeah.
And it was like the cow udders, and he just had like mounds of dirt, you know, just like placed randomly. I always thought those were kind of interesting and fun. And then I remember like him building a stall wall was the first time I ever rode like a stall wall,
really?
You know, to like scrub our speed down. Like, yeah, Glenn was definitely, you know, pretty progressive, I think, for those days, you know, but again, kind of not appreciating stuff when you're younger, you know, like sometimes you'd be like, Glenn, what the fuck is this shit you're building? Like, dude, this is stupid, you know, or what, you know, build a double or build a triple. Like, what is this? You know, but then you look back at it and you're like, damn, that was actually pretty cool, you know?
And like way ahead of its time.
Totally.
Yeah. Totally. Man, I'd love for you to go ride Derby down in Tasmania.
Yeah.
Like,
no, I've seen.
It's so sick. Like, I think when you look at it it's not like a extreme bike park, like biggest hits. You know, it's not like one of those places, but as like a mountain bike, I don't know whether purist is the right word, but like someone that just appreciates mountain biking and trail building and everything that's around it. Like, I first went there, it must have been 2018, I reckon, or maybe 27, maybe even earlier, 2017. Hans flew down there to do, like, it was one of the first trips, and I was filming. I actually remember because I had a kidney surgery like 6 weeks before it or something, and I was like pissing blood the whole time. I was like filming. I had like my backpack, and I was like, "Oh fuck, this isn't good." But yeah, so Hans went down there for like the first kind of iteration of it.
I remember that.
But man, it's just unreal.
Yeah.
Like, the town was nothing. Like, literally, there was dead. You know, you talk about a place like mountain bike, like the power of mountain biking. And this was before the COVID boom. This was like years before all that. And you go there, and the whole town is a mountain biking town, in the way that you go to Mammoth and it's a ski town. and it's just the coolest experience. Like every restaurant has bike racks out the front of it, and it's all like, it's so welcoming to mountain bikers. It's such like the culture is so alive there. And then the trails are so much fun. Like just no brakes.
Yeah.
Everything's just flow. Like if you hit the turn before with no brakes, you're making the jump, you know? And it's just, it's so enjoyable to ride. And it's like, it's almost too good. It just ruins like a normal average trail, you know?
Yeah, we used to have a place in Whistler, and go there to race every year. And my wife, she would love to ride the trails in Whistler. She would come back from Whistler. We'd be there for 3 weeks, come back, and she'd go for a ride here and be like, same for me too. You'd be like, and then she would just not really ride because she just rode for fun. It's just like you go to some sick places like that, and you come back and you're like, damn, you're kind of unmotivated to ride when you just rode like the raddest shit ever. Oh,
and it should be everywhere.
Yeah.
Like the Glen and like the World Trail, like it's government funded, It's like, and here, man, they got amazing mountains, a fuck ton of people that like riding, and there's none of that. It should be everywhere.
Yeah. No, I know that. I can't remember. It's probably 8 or 9 years ago, but last time I was in Australia, I remember riding with some guys, and we came across these guys that were working on the trail, and they had signs up, and they were digging and blah blah blah. And I learned then about that, like they get like credits for the hours that they put out, and like depending on the amount of credits, they get a certain amount of money for those credits, so they could buy more tools or more rock or whatever they need to like upkeep the trails. It was super cool. I was like, yeah, we don't really have anything. I don't even do that much trail work here because it's so regulated. Like if in Laguna, especially if you go out there and just want to be like, I'm gonna go dig today, and they catch you, they'll give you a fine.
Really?
Yeah.
Fuck, that's crazy.
So it's like I did some trail work like in the spring this year, because it's just like what happened, especially last winter, a lot of rain, then the spring, all the trails just get so overgrown with like these 7-foot high mustard plants and stuff. You can't even go through them without hitting your bars. I was just out there literally just trimming back the trail. And I had this, I was like there for 5 minutes, and I had this hiker go, "Oh, do you work for the Laguna Canyon Foundation?" And I was like, "No." And he goes, "Oh, so you're not supposed to be doing this, are you?" I was like,
"That's when you need jiu-jitsu."
Yeah, I was like, "Really, dude?"
Put him to sleep. Let him roll down.
I'm just clearing the trail out, so like a biker doesn't clean you out because they can actually see where they're going.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's a weird mentality. Some people,
Yeah.
But anyways.
Well, mate, we just did 3 hours, and I've loved it.
Yeah.
This has been unreal. I'm so glad. Like, it's I mean, I obviously do it for a living, but when you sit across from people you spent forever watching, and I was so young, and you guys were so influential in like my riding and like loving bikes and just like kind of becoming a fan of a sport for the first time. It was you guys that like gave me that experience.
Oh,
so
nice!
It's really cool to get to sit here and and share a couple.
It's
hours.
Weird where life takes you, huh?
It is. I thought about it today. I was just like, man, it's so crazy. Like the distance you can go from where you started in life,
For me, it was kind of funny. Like Wardy, when I was a little kid, Wardy's like 10 years older than me, and so I grew up in Mission Viejo, and Jeff Ward was from Mission Viejo. So when I was a little kid, and I watched Supercross, it'd be like, he was the man because he's from Mission Viejo.
Yeah.
And dude, I remember back in the day, like, we had phone books, you're like, oh, what's Wardy's phone number? You call the operator like, oh yeah, can you give me Jeff Ward's phone number, or, call Jeff Ward, and it wouldn't happen. But like, and now, and now I'm buddies with Wardy and, ride bikes with him and stuff randomly here and there. And, it's just kind of funny where life takes you,
Yeah. Yeah. And so that's kind of one of those moments for me. So I appreciate it. And I'd love to go for a ride as well. We'll definitely make that happen.
So dirt jump,
Dirt jumps, get me on the Yamaha.
Got the Yamaha. Go do some trail riding.
Yeah, and then come do the race. Try and get a couple. Have you got a couple boys you do it with?
Yeah, I can get a couple guys.
Just need 2 guys, 3 guys if you're a bit worried, but I feel like three is a sweet spot.
Yeah,
A couple boys, get out there, send it, Yahoo at each other on the ways past.
Yeah, and if you want to go down to Baja and do any techie shit, or like my buddy, one of my buddies I go to Baja with, he lives in Bishop. You know where that's at?
On the way up to Mammoth.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And he has some super gnarly techie trails there. Actually, Jeremy wants to go there too, so maybe we should get a little trip.
Keep me in the loop on that for sure, because I went to Mammoth this year for the first time, and it was so sick. Like Jeremy was fucking ripping, and we had all of our boys who's like our age, just like Jeremy McGrath, and so we're just on the side of the track like, fucking let's go, and he's coming past and they're just like signature MC style, like they got the big downhill and then you got the big right bowl turn. It's just a supercross turn, and just every lap just McGrath fucking 96 you're on through that turn, and I was like, oh, he still got it. But we trail rode the whole day before in Mammoth, and apparently there's like sick rides that go all the way through like June Lake and Bishop from Mammoth. Apparently they're unreal. So it was one of the best days I had on a bike.
What do you have for bike?
I'd get one for that.
Okay.
Yeah, I'd just got a 350 motocross bike, so I'll get one but I've got to get one for the race as well. So I'll figure it out.
I mean, I'm sure you could do it on a 4-stroke, but like some of the stuff I'd say 2-stroke would be better.
Really? So it's that techie. I might suck.
It's really techie.
Oh, that's rad.
I used to ride with Colton Haker a lot when he lived here, and
he had a cool place, in there, in Menifee.
Yeah, it was rad. Him and Jeff Aaron. I had a trials bike for a little bit.
So you fully.
I was trying to learn a little bit of that with those guys, but. Man, it was fun. Yes, I loved going riding with those guys. The tables were kind of turned, with me on a bicycle. Colton would like go up some gnarly thing, and then he would just take off his helmet and sit on a rock and watch us.
Just struggle.
Yeah. But I love it, dude. I love that kind of stuff. Like,
I haven't done that much of like the real gnarly technical shit. Like we've done a couple. We do a ride where we go for 2 weeks up to like the tip of Australia and back. And there's a couple bits where you go where it's like super rock slabby kind of technical stuff. Yeah. And I'm sure if you rode around, you could like find some cool shit, but we're kind of like.
So have you ever ridden like a super gummy tire?
Nah.
Dude, you need to get like a Meet Us, like
really?
double green stripe tire and feel the friggin' with a moose in it. I mean, we only ride mooses.
Yeah, because it's like 11 psi.
Yeah, if that.
Yeah, even
lower than that. Yeah,
right.
Like sometimes they feel almost flat.
No shit.
Yeah.
Huh.
But dude,
that's where the 300 2-stroke could be mint.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The grip and just if you got a hard tire, dude, you need to hit up the guys that Meet Us. I'm sure they'll give you some super gummy fucking double green stripe tires, and you'll just be like, what? Well, if you don't ride that stuff very much, you might not feel the difference. But no, I mean, you wouldn't want to like rip your GP on one of those kind of tires. But
yeah.
You get into that slow techie stuff, gnarly rocks, and
I'm in.
Yeah,
we'll try and make it happen.
It's kind of like cheating a little bit.
Yeah. Well, thanks again, mate.
Thank you.
We'll do it again.
All right, buddy. Appreciate it.
Legend. We're excited to announce the launch of our new membership site, gypsytales.com, packed with exclusive content and perks that you won't find anywhere else. This is your chance to become a part of the Gypsy Gang. And as a special bonus, if you sign up to an annual membership, you'll be entered into the draw to win our custom-built TC125 Gypsy Gang.